marked by the monster alpha I saved. A Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Written by Rowyn. Chapter 1. The Wolf Beneath the Ice. The wind howled like a dying beast across the frozen ravine of Fenmorn. Snow spun in violent spirals, eating away the horizon, swallowing the jagged cliffs, and biting into Rowyn Daretha's skin as she stumbled forward, her boots slipping on the glazed rocks beneath the powder. The silver scroll pressed tight against her chest pulsed with unnatural heat, even as her blood froze at the edges of every wound she had earned in the run. They were still chasing her. She didn't have to look back to know it. The white-branded had no need to scream commands or let out rallying calls. They hunted in silence, like sacred ghosts blessed by the temple to erase her existence. Every time she faltered, every time her lungs begged for air, she imagined them catching up, white cloaks fluttering like vulture wings, iron spears gleaming with promise of death. Rowyn clutched her side where a javelin had grazed her ribs earlier, blood warm under her fingers. The snow drank it greedily. She wasn't going to make it far. Then the edge appeared. The ravine yawned open before her like a god's broken jaw, steep and brutal, the depths below clouded by the rising mist of frozen breath. One misstep, and she'd vanish into it. Behind her, she heard the crunch of boots on stone. No time. She leapt. Air screamed past her ears, her heart launching into her throat as her body plunged into the abyss. For a breathless moment, she soared between death and darkness, before crashing through a crust of brittle ice, the world turning into sharp, glittering chaos. Cold hit her like knives. She gasped, then screamed, then sank. When her eyes fluttered open, everything was blue. The surface above her shimmered, fractured by snow and light, but she didn't rise. Instead, she lay twisted in a cradle of broken ice, her limbs trembling, lungs heaving. The scroll was still with her. Still glowing. Still humming. Her blood had formed a small, slow stream that trickled down a split in the ice. Too neat, too narrow. Not natural. Rowyn followed it with her gaze. Below the fractured sheet she lay on, deep under the frozen water, something stirred. It was not the movement of a fish or the whisper of a current. It was breath. Heavy. Ancient. And then she saw it. A shape, massive, black as obsidian, beneath the ice. Curled like a predator in sleep. Long, jagged limbs folded beneath a thick pelt that shimmered faintly red in the places her blood touched the ice. A wolf. But far too large. Larger than any beast she'd ever known. Its body was ringed with pale bone-like spines, and veins of something dark and molten-like traced its ribs and snout. Around it were the shattered remnants of a stone altar, covered in runes half scraped away by time. No, she whispered, lips blue, teeth chattering. The wolf didn't move. Rowyn forced herself upright, crawling toward it. Something in her bones screamed not to. But something in her blood, her cursed, marked, traitorous blood, drew her closer. She reached the altar. A long dead hand jutted from beneath the ice near its edge, fingers wrapped around a blade turned black with time. A name barely visible on the stone. Fenmorn. Her breath caught. She had heard the name in whispers during her healer training. In forbidden tales carried by travelers. The Bone King. The wolf that burned. The last curse of the North. She pressed her bloodied hand to the ice unconsciously, whispering a prayer, not of mercy, but of survival. Please. I don't want to die here. I want to live. A drop of blood slid off her palm into a fissure. And the world cracked. The ground beneath her gave a sickening moan. Ice split in a jagged flash, veins of red light radiating out like claws. The altar groaned. Snow trembled from the heights above. The shape beneath the ice exhaled. And moved. Rowyn scrambled back as ice burst upward in a spray of diamond shards. A howl erupted from the deep, low, guttural, vibrating through her ribs. The ice exploded outward, and the beast within emerged, shaking off centuries of slumber. He rose. Towering, black-furred, his massive form unfurling like smoke from a volcano. The runes of the altar seared themselves onto his spine as he straightened, a crown of horns twisting from his skull. Crimson fire glowed beneath his fur like buried embers. He turned his head, looked at her. The eyes were not those of a beast. They were golden, ringed in red. And they were human. Rowyn's knees buckled. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The wolf moved toward her, slowly, like a hunter savoring the moment before the kill. Her hands found the scroll. She pressed it against her chest, heart pounding like a war drum. The beast stopped before her, hot breath washing over her face. It lowered its head, sniffed, and shifted. The transformation was not gentle, not elegant. It was a tearing apart, bones rearranging with crackling snaps, shadows warping as fur receded and flesh returned. When it was done, a man stood before her. Naked, scarred, blood dripping from claws not yet fully faded. His hair fell in thick black waves over his shoulders, the tips glowing faintly red as if each strand remembered fire. His body was a tapestry of ruin and regrowth, old wounds, old strength, old rage. He looked down at her. Rowyn couldn't speak. He stepped closer. Behind them, above, voices echoed. The white branded had found the edge. The man turned toward the sound, eyes narrowing. And then he was gone. In a blur of movement, he was up the ravine wall, into the snow, a storm of shadow and fong. Screams followed. Screams that stopped too quickly. Rowyn lay trembling. When he returned, blood streaked his chest and mouth. His eyes were still golden, but darker now. He crouched beside her, a predator's grace in every motion. His fingers curled under her chin, lifting her gaze to meet his. "You called me," he said, voice like ash and wind. With blood. She barely managed a nod. "Then you're mine." His claw, half formed still, pressed gently to her throat. Not cutting. Not yet. She should have been terrified. But all she felt was heat. Not warmth. Something deeper. Something ancient. The moonlight caught in his hair, reflecting crimson. Beneath the ice, the wolf had opened its eyes. Chapter 2: The Blood That Binds. The cave pulsed like a dying organ. Rowyn pressed her back against the jagged wall of the hollow spine caves, her breath misting in the cold air as she stared at the body sprawled across the stone floor. The massive shape of Coran Fenmorn lay motionless, his dark hair splayed in a fan across the rock, still slick with melting ice and blood. His chest rose and fell slowly, but the steam rising from his skin told her enough. He burned from the inside out. Not just wounded. Fighting something older. Deeper. She should have run. Should have left him bleeding and cold, fled into the northern wind and vanished like smoke. But she couldn't. Not because of mercy. Because of the chain. She touched the side of her neck where the phantom burn of it still lingered. Invisible, but real. Something, some tether, had latched between them the moment he pressed his claw to her throat. It wasn't a mark she could see. But it pulled. Tugged at her chest every time she moved more than 10 steps from him. A spiritual leash. And worse, when she had tried to force distance, her own body rebelled. Her blood boiled. The scroll was silent now, its silver glow muted and faint. But the connection between them hummed like a buried wire. She knelt reluctantly beside Coran's prone form. His breath rasped like gravel, and a red-black bruise spread across his ribs where the shift had cracked something vital. That, at least, was familiar. She had treated warriors before. And monsters. This one was both. She reached for her satchel. Most of her supplies were ruined from the fall, soaked in freezing water or torn apart during the escape. All she had left were her hands. And blood. Rowyn took a shaky breath and bit into the tip of her thumb, hard enough to draw a thick, slow bead. It dripped onto her other palm, slick and warm. She pressed it to Coran's chest. The blood sizzled where it touched his skin. He groaned, his head twitching slightly, muscles tightening beneath her fingers. Too late to stop now. She leaned in closer, muttering the old syllables, the language only the cursed bloodlines use now. Silver fire flickered from her palm, dancing up her arm like veins of light. The cave filled with the scent of iron and heat. Coran shuddered beneath her. His skin flushed darker. The blood she had pressed into him began to ripple, sinking deeper. She pressed harder. "Don't wake," she whispered. The glow surged, silver flames racing across his ribcage in delicate patterns, curling like runes, licking the curve of his shoulder and throat. Her hand trembled as she traced the final mark. She was too close. She could feel the thrum of his heart under her palm. She could smell him, charred cedar, frost, and something darker. Older. She didn't realize her own eyes had shut until she felt breath on her cheek. Then his fingers closed around her wrist. Rowyn's eyes snapped open. Coran was awake. Barely. His pupils were blown wide, red ring flashing faintly in the darkness. But he was awake, and staring straight at her blood-glowing hand, still pressed against his bare chest. "Where did you learn that?" he rasped. Rowyn jerked back, but not fast enough. His grip held her firm, not cruel, but unrelenting. "I didn't ask for your help. I didn't offer it," she shot back, voice sharp. "You'd have bled out. That would have made things easier for me." His mouth twitched at that, something like a smile, wolfish and slow. "You smell like prophecy," he said. She froze. "You're delirious." His fingers tightened slightly. "No. I remember that fire. The silver. The mark." She stared down at her arm. The blood that had climbed her skin now pulsed faintly beneath the surface, like it had sunk into her. She tried to wipe it away, only to find faint gray-silver threads beneath her skin, twisting along her veins like ink under frost. "What did you do to me?" she breathed. Coran's eyes gleamed. "Nothing yet." She stood, fast and shaky, wiping her hands on the edge of her coat. "This changes nothing. We're not bound. I'm not, whatever you think I am. You carry the silver flame. I carry a curse," she snapped. But her body said otherwise. Her heart raced. Her skin tingled where he'd touched it. She didn't like the way her body leaned toward him, as if he was gravity itself. As if some part of her soul had remembered him before her mind could. Coran sat up slowly, each movement taut with restrained pain. He touched his own chest, fingers brushing the places where her blood had burned. "You don't know what you've awakened." Rowyn swallowed. "Neither do you." A sharp cry echoed from above. They both froze. Another. Closer. Rowyn's heart stopped. The white sigil hunters had found the ravine. The blood magic. The silver flame. It had called to them like a beacon. "They're here," she whispered. Coran's head tilted. "Let them come." "No. We can't fight them. Not like this." He raised a brow, amused. "We." She glared. "The second you touched me, you dragged me into this. There's a bond." He stood, unbothered by his nakedness, and stretched his back with a sound like cracking branches. "Good. Then you'll stay close." "I didn't agree to that." "You didn't have to." His gaze burned into her. "I can feel your heartbeat, little flame." Even now. Rowyn backed toward the mouth of the cave. "We have to go." Coran stepped after her, slowly, testing his limbs. "Where?" "East. There's an abandoned passage. I've used it before." He followed her into the shadows. Behind them, the blood markings still glowed faintly on the stone floor. A whisper of power. A memory of fire. They ran together, not as allies, not yet, but not as strangers anymore. The chain that bound them pulled tighter with each step, invisible and inevitable. And when night finally fell, and they collapsed in a hollowed chamber behind a fallen slab of rock, Rowyn caught sight of her arm in the moonlight filtering through a crack above. Silver. Gray. Veins of ancient script now woven into her skin like whispers. She choked back a gasp. Then Coran's voice filled her head, low and intimate, as if he were brushing his lips against her ear. I told you. I can hear your heartbeat. Chapter 3. The Sanctuary Burns. The wind carried the scent of ash before they saw the smoke. Rowyn crested the ridge with her heart in her throat, frost crunching under her boots, the cold gnawing at her bones. Velwith Sanctuary lay sprawled in the valley below, her last refuge, her hidden corner of the world, now drowning in fire. No, she breathed, frozen in place. No, no. The village roofs had collapsed under flame. Smoke billowed skyward like a funeral banner. Snow-covered bodies were strewn like forgotten dolls between the smoldering buildings. A faint scream fractured the wind. Coran stepped up behind her, his breath slow and measured. He said nothing, his expression unreadable. The only flicker of emotion came when her knees buckled, and he caught her with a steady hand. "I have to get down there," she whispered. He didn't stop her. But he followed. They descended through the trees like shadows, silent, vast. Rowyn's thoughts fractured into flashes. The infirmary hut with its worn linens, the children she had once mended, the elder who gifted her that bone-carved pendant now lying cold against her breast. Their names burned in her mind. She had left to protect them. And now they were dying anyway. They slipped past the broken gate. The sanctuary was a graveyard. A white-cloaked figure stood at the center of the village square, flanked by armored hunters. Her cowl was down, hair bound in thin braids wrapped with bone beads, her skin pale as frost. She held a branding iron in one hand, glowing faintly with holy fire. Sister Elsha Moraine, High Adjudicator of the White Sigil. The Holy Order's whisper and blade. She knelt beside a woman's corpse, lifted the chin with deliberate grace, then drove the brand into her brow. The dead woman's flesh hissed. A sigil flared white before fading, unaccepted. The woman had died unmarked. Unsaved. Another one. "Burn her," Elsha said quietly. Rowyn trembled behind the shattered edge of a hut, ball rising in her throat. Coran's gaze swept the square, cold and calculating. "She's looking for something," he murmured. "She's looking for me," Rowyn said. Then a child's cry rang out, sharp, terrified. Rowyn surged forward, but Coran caught her wrist. "You'll die. I can't just. You're not ready." She looked at him, fury and sorrow warring in her chest. "It's not about me." But Coran didn't release her. Across the square, the child was dragged toward the fire pit, two hunters clutching his arms. He fought them, sobbing. That snapped something in her. Rowyn wrenched free, tearing the blood dagger from her belt, and sprinted into the open. "Elsha." The hunters froze. The High Adjudicator turned. "Ah," she said, her voice smooth and kind. "The little heretic returns." Rowyn threw the dagger, but a hunter intercepted it with his spear. "I won't run again," she snarled. "You won't have to." Elsha raised her hand. White fire blazed from her palm, pure, searing, righteous. Rowyn flinched. And then the ground exploded. Coran landed between them in a flash of black and blood, his shift half-formed, claws glinting, eyes glowing like twin coals. He moved too fast. Too brutally. The first hunter didn't even scream before his throat was gone. Rowyn staggered back as blood sprayed the snow. Coran roared. Fire met him, but it wasn't enough. He was more shadow than flesh now, his bones splitting, back arching, blood flame crackling across his limbs like a living thing. His face was still partly human, his voice was not. The hunters faltered. Coran surged forward, and the village turned red. Rowyn couldn't breathe. The boy she tried to save huddled beneath a burning cart. She dragged him out and shoved him toward the trees. "Run. Don't stop." More screams echoed behind her. By the time she turned back, the square was littered with corpses. Smoke thickened the air. The sanctuary was truly gone. And Coran. Coran stood among the ruin, chest heaving, arms slick with gore. His shift had receded slightly, but the black veins along his neck remained. His gaze found her. "You're safe," he said, low and quiet. She stepped back. You didn't have to kill them all. They would have killed you. They were people. He tilted his head. I only save what's mine. Her hands clenched. You didn't save the others. You saved me. A beat. Then, quietly, almost casually, yes. Rowyn's voice cracked. You think that makes it right? I think it makes it necessary. The wind howled through the broken village, carrying smoke and silence. A crack echoed behind them. Elsha wasn't dead. She knelt in the blood, one eye burned, but smiling. Her fingers touched the ground where Rowyn's blood had dripped. She whispered something, and the ground glowed. Coran lunged, but too late. A burst of light erupted from the circle, blinding, cold, holy. When it cleared, Elsha was gone. But the mark remained. In the center of the square, a symbol carved itself into the scorched earth, vast and cruel. A circle of thorns around a vertical blade. The eye of the eternal sigil. A summoning mark. Rowyn stared, numb. Then she turned and saw something worse. On the wall of the old healer's hut, the flames had burned away the plaster, revealing stone beneath. And carved into that stone. She stepped closer. What does it say? She whispered. Coran's expression went unreadable. Silver flame shall wed the Bone King. Her heart stopped. I don't believe in prophecy. Coran said nothing. But in his silence, she heard the answer. She had never had a choice. Chapter 4. The Oath of the Bloodbound. The citadel rose from the frost like a skeleton of stone. Ashvin had once been a fortress, a stronghold of the old blood clans before the temples razed it in the Purge. Now it stood hollowed and broken, towers half swallowed by creeping ice, ramparts collapsed like crumbling ribs. Moonlight cast long shadows through shattered archways, and wind howled through the empty halls like distant wolves mourning something they couldn't name. Rowyn pressed a hand to the cold stone wall, steadying herself. Her breath puffed in the dark, ragged and quick. The weight of the last few days, of fire and blood and prophecy, clung to her like a shroud. She hadn't spoken since they left the ruins of Velwith. And Coran hadn't pushed her. He had merely watched. Now he stood near the shattered altar at the heart of the ruined keep, his back to her, silent and still as a statue carved from night. The wind toyed with his dark hair, revealing the faint pulse of red at the nape of his neck, where the veins of bone fire never fully receded. The Bone King. Rowyn wrapped her arms tighter around herself. She could still feel the echo of her blood's pull, still feel the ghost of his voice in her head. You belong to me now. The memory made her breath catch. Then the silence broke. Boots echoed on stone. Not Coran's. A shadow dropped from the crumbling arch above, landing with a fluid grace that spoke of inhuman training. A man, tall, lean, wrapped in dark furs and armor that gleamed faintly with crimson runes. Halen Duskvein. She didn't know him, but Coran did. Coran turned, and the faint shift in his posture was enough to charge the room with tension. You're late. You should never have awakened, Halen said coldly. The world was better without you. Better for whom? Coran's voice was lazy, but his claws flexed at his sides. For those who buried us? Burned us? You were buried for a reason. I was betrayed. Rowyn stepped closer instinctively. Halen's eyes flicked to her and narrowed. You've bound yourself, he said, incredulous. To her. Coran didn't answer. She's mortal. Human. A flicker. And you've sealed your fate to hers. Coran's tone sharpened. She is more than that. Halen turned to her, gaze piercing. Do you even know what he is? I know enough, Rowyn said quietly. Halen scoffed. No, you don't. His bloodline was banished because it couldn't be contained. The bonefire isn't a gift, it's a curse. He's not a man. He's a calamity. And you, if you think you can control him, you'll die for that mistake. Rowyn's hands curled into fists. Coran stepped between them, voice like steel wrapped in silk. Enough. But Halen wasn't done. You know what happens next. The more she heals you, the more of herself she gives. The bond consumes. She'll burn. Rowyn blinked. What? Coran didn't meet her eyes. I used my blood to soothe your shift, she said, breath catching. At the sanctuary. And last night, when your pulse spiked in your sleep, you studied it, he finished for her. And it hurt, she admitted. Afterward. Like something drained out of me. Halen's expression turned grim. That's because it did. The bond you've entered isn't just spiritual, it's sacrificial. Every time you pull him back from the edge, you give him a piece of yourself. Her stomach turned. How much? Coran answered this time, voice low. Enough. Rowyn stepped back. And you didn't tell me? You weren't ready to know. That's not your decision. Everything about you is my decision now, he said. Silence cracked between them. Then Rowyn slapped him. The sound echoed like thunder in the hollow chamber. You don't get to choose for me, she whispered. You don't own me. Coran's head turned slowly back toward her. His cheek reddened, but he didn't flinch. He stepped forward, and the bond between them thrummed with something hot and primal and dangerous. I don't want to own you, he murmured. I want to bind you. She laughed once, harsh and disbelieving. There's a difference? He reached for her wrist slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. He brought her hand to his chest, pressed her palm over the faint glow of his bone-scarred heart. My strength will cost you. I can't change that. But I can swear this, if your blood fades, so will mine. If you burn, I will burn the world to answer it. She shook her head. You're not making sense. I am. I want an oath. What kind of oath? He reached down and drew a dagger from his belt, one of bone and onyx. He turned her palm up. Blood for blood, he said. Bind us properly. Not by fate. By choice. She stared at the blade. Then at him. Is it still a choice, she whispered, if you've already made it impossible to leave? His eyes softened. Just barely. I won't force your hand. But the world will. And I'd rather you be bound to me than broken by them. Halen turned away with a bitter snort. Rowyn hesitated. Then she took the blade. She cut her palm slowly, watching the blood rise. He did the same. Their hands pressed together, blood against blood. The bond pulsed. Not just spiritual this time. Tangible. Carved into skin and soul. She gasped as the heat surged through her veins, sharp and bright, like lightning wrapped in silk. Her knees buckled. Coran caught her. And in that moment, it was no longer about prophecy or fate or bloodlines. It was about the way he held her. Not tenderly, but possessively. As if her pain was his, and her fury fed something dark inside him that called it love. You're mine, he whispered against her ear. And now the world will bleed for it. Behind them, Halen faded into the shadows of the ruined hall. He had seen enough. He would not serve a king who sacrificed his queen for power. Not again. He turned east, toward the old alliances. Toward war. And that night, Rowyn dreamed of fire. In the dream, she stood naked before a throne of bone. Her skin was burning. Her blood ran silver and smoke. And Coran knelt behind her, voice soft as he pressed a kiss to her spine. You saved me with blood. I'll claim you with it. Chapter 5, The Mirror of the Moon. The air around Mirror Lake ruins shimmered with ancient silence. The lake itself had long frozen into a perfect sheet of moon-reflecting glass, its surface so still it seemed to hold breath. Cracks spiderwebbed faintly beneath the ice, but they pulsed with a quiet glow, faint silver, matching the thread-like markings now etched into Rowyn's arms. She knelt at the edge, her gloved fingers brushing snow from a half-buried altar stone. Coran stood a few paces behind her, his dark cloak pulled low over his face, the tension in his shoulders unrelenting. He did not speak often since Ashvin. Since the fire. Rowyn hadn't spoken either. Not after hearing the screams. Not after smelling scorched flesh where she used to heal wounds. But Mirror Lake called to her. Nemia Viral, her old mentor, appeared like a ghost between the pines, wrapped in robes woven with star thread sigils. Her eyes were clouded with time, but lit up at the sight of Rowyn's hands pressed to the ancient slab. "You came," the old woman whispered. "The lake remembers." Rowyn didn't rise. "The silver in my blood. You told me once it was a curse." "No," Nemia said softly, stepping closer. "It is a covenant." Coran's head tilted slightly. His golden eyes narrowed, reading the woman with sharp, lupin caution. Rowyn looked up at Nemia. "Then tell me, what is it that I carry?" Nemia knelt beside her and swept more snow from the altar's face. Runes carved in curving lines began to gleam faintly in the moonlight. "Your bloodline was never meant to be bound to the healing arts alone. That was the temple's doctrine. A lie to keep you obedient." She ran a knotted finger over the markings. "You are the vessel of the silver flame, the only bloodline capable of holding the embers of the Bone Kings." Coran moved. Snow hissed underfoot as he came to stand over them. "That name again," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "Bone Kings." Nemia glanced up. "You would know them better than I, child of Fenmorn." Rowyn looked between them, her breath caught in her throat. "The Bone Kings," Nemia continued, "were not monsters. They were guardians. Until one of them broke the oath of the Nightbound and spilled sacred blood. That act cursed the bloodline, turned protectors into predators." Coran's face was unreadable, but his fists were clenched. Rowyn touched her own wrist, feeling the throb beneath skin that now bore the faint gray shimmer of the mate mark, something that hadn't dulled since the Citadel. "And me?" she asked. "Where do I fit into all this?" Nemia's eyes were sad. "Your ancestor was the one who bound the Bone Kings in ice and sealed them with her life. Her blood bore both mercy and fire. You, child, are her echo." Coran laughed, a short sound. "So she's to decide whether to kill me again, is that it?" "No," Nemia said. "You already decided your fate the day you tore the sky and blood stars onto this land. She only has to decide if she'll carry you back into the fire." A silence fell. Then Nemia rose. "The truth lies beneath the lake. The runes will answer to your blood. But beware the mirror. It reflects more than just your face." Rowyn hesitated, then stood, peeling off her gloves. The wind bit at her fingers, but she pressed her palm to the rune stone. The ice beneath their feet began to pulse. Coran growled low in his throat, eyes flashing. "Rowyn." The runes flared. Light exploded around them. The lake cracked open, not in shards, but in spiraling glyphs of ancient magic. Rowyn's body was yanked downward, the world inverting in a dizzying spin of moonlight and silence. And then she was alone. Beneath the lake, in a cavern made of memory and illusion. The mirror had opened. She stood in a field of ash. The sky was red, not with fire, but with blood. Smoke coiled into grotesque shapes. And in the distance, on a bone altar carved from the ribs of some ancient beast, a woman screamed. Rowyn tried to move, but her body was frozen, as if bound to the scene. The woman's hands were pinned wide, silver blood pouring from her chest as a robed figure plunged a knife into her heart. At the foot of the altar, a boy howled, a voice fractured, feral, young. Coran. He had been a child. And he had watched his mother die, bled like an offering to gods who never came. "No," Rowyn whispered. The illusion twisted. She was no longer just watching. She was inside the boy's mind, feeling his rage, his grief, the moment something inside him snapped and burned and shattered all at once. The altar exploded. The sky cracked. And from the boy's body rose fire made of bone and blood and hunger. Rowyn fell to her knees as the illusion ended. The chamber faded. She gasped for breath. A hand gripped her wrist. Coran stood above her, breath ragged, chest bare beneath his coat. His eyes gleamed with something ancient and volatile. "You saw it," he said. She nodded, lips trembling. "Your mother." His jaw clenched. "They made me watch. Said it was to purify the bloodline. To break the Bone King's will." Rowyn reached up and touched his face. "You didn't become a monster. They made you one." Coran's breath hitched. And for a moment, there was no war. No curse. Only his forehead pressed against hers, their hands locked between their chests. She could feel his heartbeat, wild, irregular, no longer wholly human. "I thought I could kill you if I had to," she whispered. "But now—" His voice broke into hers like thunder. "You won't have to." She closed her eyes. "Then promise me something." "What?" "When I lose control, when the flame consumes me, will you burn with me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he kissed her. Not with softness. With hunger. With desperation. With the unbearable, aching grief of a soul that had never learned how to love without losing. Rowyn kissed him back. There was blood on his lips, hers, maybe, and something primal stirred beneath her skin. The mate bond, faint and flickering, began to burn brighter. But just as quickly, the moment shattered. A low growl echoed behind them. Halen stood at the edge of the mirror chamber, cloak billowing, sword drawn. "I warned you," he said to Coran. "She's changing you." "That's how it begins." Coran moved to shield Rowyn with his body. "You're late." Halen's eyes flicked to Rowyn. "She carries the Ember Rune." "I saw it." "The godblood calls to her." He held out a small shard of stone, etched with runes Rowyn had seen on the altar. "You would trade her for power?" Coran asked, voice cold. "I would trade her to stop you," Halen said. And then he vanished, taking the shard with him. Rowyn's breath caught. She hadn't even seen him move. Coran swore in the old tongue. "He's going to the temple." Rowyn stood, shaken. "With the rune. With a map to your soul," Coran said grimly. "And they'll carve it out of you if they must." They stared at one another. No more illusions. No more lies. They were bound, by blood, by memory, by a promise that was older than both of them. Later that night, as the ruins fell silent, Rowyn sat by the lake again, staring at her reflection. In the mirrored water, her image shifted. Not her as she was, but her on fire, kneeling in blood. Coran behind her, blade in hand. And her own voice whispering, "This is fate." She shut her eyes. The cold couldn't reach her now. Only the bond could. Only the silence that said, "You were always meant to burn." Chapter 6. The Fong in the Flesh. The forest breathed around her, low, feverish breaths of rot and cold and pine sap. Rowyn crouched beside a fallen tree, blood slick on her palm, fingers pressed desperately to the skin above her heart. It was happening again. The mark was spreading. What had once been a pale shimmer threading her wrist now reached up toward her collarbone, branching like veins made of moonlight and frost. Beneath her skin, it pulsed, not just with magic, but with something living. She could feel it moving, growing inward, rooting itself. Coran. Her thoughts formed around his name like bruises forming under the skin. Every breath she took felt borrowed. Every step, as if the air had been thinned to match the pace of his heartbeat. She pressed harder. "Stop," she hissed. "Get out of me." The silver threads quivered. And then she felt it again. Not a voice. Not even a thought. Just the sense of him. Of something vast and wounded and burning curled deep inside her chest. No, she staggered back and fumbled for the runes carved into the bone dagger hidden in her satchel. Nemia had given it to her once. She'd said it was a relic older than the temple itself. To cut what gods could not bind. She drew the blade. And whispered the words of the severance rite. The edge touched her skin. A scream tore free from her throat. Not from pain. From something deeper. The mark ignited, silver fire rushing up her spine like a tidal wave of ice and blood. She convulsed. Her vision split in two. She saw the forest around her, and him. Coran. His sleeping body wrapped in shadow miles away. His back arching violently as if her pain were his. His mouth opening in a silent roar. She collapsed into darkness. When she woke, it was not to moonlight, but ropes. And the sound of boots on pine needles. "Don't bother screaming," Halen's voice said from behind her. "The temple taught me how to silence pain." Rowyn blinked blearily. Her wrists were bound, her mouth tasting of iron and ash. She lay slung over the back of a stag-hide horse, the forest dragging past in gray streaks. Halen didn't look at her. He didn't need to. "You're lucky," he said. "If it were anyone else, I'd have slit your throat. But they're offering absolution. For my whole line. All I have to do is bring them the witch who woke the Bone Tyrant." "You don't understand what they'll do to me," she croaked. "I do," he said coldly. "And I'm still choosing them." The ropes cut deeper. She felt something inside her begin to crack. Not from fear. From the knowledge that this time, Coran wouldn't reach her in time. But he did. Far behind them, in a grove of withered pines, Coran awoke with a sound that wasn't human. His body jerked upright, blood pouring from his nose. The bond snapped tight. Rowyn's pain surged through him in cold waves. Her fear. Her agony. And the betrayal. The betrayal hurt worst of all. He threw off the furs and stumbled toward the fire, claws scraping stone as he tried to keep control. His hands, no longer hands, dug into the earth as the bones beneath his skin shifted. "No," he growled to the night. "No." But the wolf inside him howled. And the Bone King remembered what it was to lose. The campfire hissed out as he vanished into the forest, a blur of rage and broken oaths. Rowyn felt it when he came. Not visually. Not through sound. But in the way the forest itself changed. Birds vanished. Wind died. And then screams. Not hers. Halen's men. The scouts riding ahead, gone in an instant. The sound of bones cracking, blades drawn too late. Trees shuddered as something massive tore through them, a howl rising that sounded like the voice of every wolf ever drowned in blood. Halen cursed and drew a knife. Rowyn's heart slammed against her ribs. Not in fear of Halen. In fear of what was coming. She turned her head just in time to see fire. Not flame, blood fire, burning blue-white around a massive silhouette that leapt from the trees. Coran didn't roar. He moved like vengeance given muscle and fong. The first man he touched was torn in half. Halen screamed and ran. Rowyn rolled off the horse, hitting the ground hard, vision spinning. She scrambled backward, her bonds cutting into her skin. "Coran." He turned. And for one terrifying second, he didn't see her. He saw only blood. Only prey. Her lips trembled. "It's me." The growl stopped. His massive wolf form loomed above her, blood dripping from his jaw, eyes burning like twin moons eclipsed in fire. She raised her hand slowly, trembling. "Don't." He stepped closer. Sniffed the air. His breath caught. And then he collapsed. The beast evaporated, folding in on itself, until he was human again, naked and shaking and covered in blood. He dropped to his knees beside her, grabbed the ropes and tore them free with a snarl. His hands, now human, trembled against her cheeks. "I felt you," he rasped. "I felt you trying to leave me." Her throat tightened. "I didn't mean, Halen, I felt you cut me out." His voice cracked. "You tried to remove me from your soul." She couldn't deny it. So she didn't. "I had to know if what I feel is real," she whispered. "If it's choice. Or if I'm just bound." His hands slipped from her face. He turned away. "I don't know either," he said. Rowyn looked at him, at the blood on his skin, the shake in his voice, the way he crouched like a man afraid of his own hands. And something inside her broke open. "I had a dream," she said, voice hoarse. "I was a wolf. Silver fire pouring from my mouth. You killed me." Coran turned slowly. "I would never." "You did." The silence between them held the shape of truth. He reached out, touched her wrist. The mark pulsed. "You won't run again," he said. She met his gaze. And did not flinch. But inside, something curled tighter. Because she couldn't tell anymore if it was his presence that gave her strength. Or took it away. Later, they burned the remains of Halen's camp. The blood fire danced high. And in its light, Coran stood with his back to her, shoulders bare, his body marked with scars she couldn't name. Rowyn didn't approach him. But she knew he knew she watched. "I don't want to belong to anyone," she said. "Too late," he replied, voice hollow. "You belong to fate now." Somewhere deep in the temple's cold walls, a rune flared. Halen's shard, taken from the Mirror Lake altar, was placed on a dais of bone. And Sister Elsha whispered to the gods above, "Let the hunt begin." Chapter 7. The Kiss Beneath the Curse. The shrine loomed from the forest like a wound carved into the earth. Its stone arches were blackened by old fire, twisted with roots that bled sap the color of molten gold. The trees surrounding it leaned inward as if trying to shield or contain what slept within. Rowyn stumbled over the threshold, her breath ragged. Her boots skidded on slick moss as Coran caught her elbow, his fingers too warm, too steady. "Here?" she asked, voice barely audible over the wind. "This place was meant for blood and binding," he said. "It suits us." She almost laughed, bitter and breathless. "It's cursed." "So are we." The shrine was built around a sunken altar, carved into the shape of a wolf's open jaw. Glyphs glowed faintly beneath years of grime, some whispering in dead tongues. Silver lichen covered everything except the dais at the center, untouched by time or nature. Rowyn turned toward it and froze. The mark on her wrist pulsed. So did the one above Coran's heart. As if the shrine could hear them. As if it had been waiting. That night, she dreamed of chains. Not cold metal ones, but roots, writhing, seething, alive, winding around her ankles, her ribs, her throat. She was bound in a circle of salt and ash, her blood dripping into the mouth of the stone wolf. In the dream, she screamed. But the air was thick with incense and ritual silence. She wasn't herself. She wore silver robes. Her hair was braided like a priestess. Her chest was bare, heart glowing beneath skin too pale to be her own. "This isn't my body," she thought. And then she looked up and saw Coran kneeling beside the altar. Younger. Eyes wide and wet with terror. "Mama," he whispered in the dream. And that's when Rowyn knew. She was seeing his memory. Living his loss. She was his mother. The knife came down, held by robed priests with sunless eyes. Her breath caught as pain flared through her ribcage, blinding and final. The last thing she felt was Coran's hands, small, desperate, reaching for her as her blood splashed across the altar. Rowyn woke up screaming. He was already there. Kneeling beside her, hands pressed to her cheeks, his breath ragged. "You weren't supposed to see that," he growled. She shook her head, still trapped between memory and reality. "That was you. You saw too much. You kissed me." Her voice cracked. "In the dream. You pulled me into it." He didn't deny it. "I had to show you why I can't be saved." Her breath hitched. "You wanted me to feel it." "Yes." The firelight danced across his skin, drawing silver lines from the mark on his chest to the curve of his throat. He looked like a carved statue, something old and dangerous, but human in a way she hadn't seen before. "You keep pretending you don't care," she whispered. "But you do. You do." He closed his eyes. Only in dreams. The silence between them stretched, charged and painful. And then he moved closer. Slow. Deliberate. Rowyn's hand lifted, trembling as it found his jaw. He leaned into it. Just slightly. And then, softly, like a ghost, he kissed her. Not her mouth. Her brow. As if sealing something. Or mourning it. The moment shattered. Coran pulled back, his face cold again. "Don't mistake mercy for affection. But you. That was the last time I'll show you softness," he said. "Don't expect it again." Her chest ached. "Why?" "Because love doesn't survive the kind of fire we're walking into." He turned away. But something clung to her. A warmth. A thrum in her chest that wasn't hers. She touched her sternum. The mark was gone. Replaced by a deeper pain. An ache like hunger. Like longing. At midnight, the shrine pulsed. She stood atop the central dais, arms bare, silver light pouring from her wrists. Coran's hands hovered near her ribs, drawing symbols not with chalk, but with the heat of his blood. The final words of the half-bond rite echoed between them, spoken in a language neither of them had learned, only remembered. She felt herself sink. Not physically, spiritually. Into him. Into the space beneath his bones. She saw flashes of memory, storms, chains, nights spent howling at nothing but the sky. She saw his dreams. His broken promises. The first time he killed. The last time he prayed. And then, she was there, in a dark cavern beneath his ribs, her hands on his heart. It beat once. And the bond sealed. When she opened her eyes, Coran was watching her with something unreadable. She opened her mouth, but couldn't speak. Because in that moment, she felt it. His hatred. His need. His lust. His grief. All of it. Inside her. She staggered back, gasping. I can't, Coran, I can't carry this. He caught her wrists. You will. You're mine now. Not by my choice. Not by yours. By blood. By fire. By the mistake the gods made when they let you live long enough to find me. His voice was hoarse. And raw. And terrifying. But before she could answer, the mirror above the shrine shimmered. Not like water. Like skin stretched too thin. A shape emerged. A face. Not Coran's. Not hers. But a woman in silver robes, her eyes empty as the moon, her smile sharp and knowing. Poor girl, said the voice of High Priestess Malveth. You thought the Bone King was the chain. But you haven't yet seen the cage. The shrine trembled. The vision vanished. And Rowyn realized she was never meant to be free. Only meant to choose the prettier prison. Chapter 8. The Chains of Moonlight. The air over the lake of veiled sigils shimmered with unnatural stillness. Water mirrored the moon like a polished blade, and pale mist slithered across its glassy surface, too deliberate, too silent. Rowyn stood at the edge of the lake, boots sinking into soft moss, the hem of her cloak heavy with dew. The glow of the twin moons filtered down through a gap in the canopy, casting the water in an eerie silvery luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. Coran knelt beside her, one hand brushing the water. Here, she asked. He didn't look up. This lake remembers. The old rites. The true ones. Rowyn swallowed hard. You think we can cleanse the mark? I think the mark is no longer just on you. He lifted his gaze, eyes like coals behind frost. It's between us now. The bond. The curse. The blood. All knotted into one. He stepped forward, bare feet sinking into the lake. No ripples. No splash. As if the water feared him. Come, he said without turning. Rowyn hesitated. Her skin still hummed from the aftermath of the last ritual. Her dreams remained thick with fire and salt. Her wrists bore the silvery traces of the spiritual chain Coran had wrapped around her soul, and yet, when he extended his hand, she took it. The water was warm. Wrongly so. Deeper they went, until the mist cloaked them entirely. And then, chains burst from the lake like striking serpents. They came from the water, from the air, from within the mirrored surface. Gleaming with moonlight, they wrapped around Coran's limbs, his throat, his chest. He snarled, too slow to resist. The runes carved into the chains blazed blue-white, searing into his skin with a hiss. From the shadows, the priests emerged. 6 of them. Robes soaked in holy ash. Mouths sewn shut with silver thread. Eyes wide with blind devotion. They were ceremonial executors of the moonlit sigil, God's leashed executioners. One lifted a chalice carved from white stone. Another held a blade of sun steel etched with lunar verses. The lead stepped forward, whispered in a voice like crushed bone. By decree of the Ever Temple, we bind the bone heir. By the light of the god moon, we rend the beast from his soul. No, Rowyn breathed. She lunged forward, but one chain caught her ankle mid-step, dragging her down to her knees. Coran's body arched in the water, his scream low and guttural. From the center of his chest, a darkness began to pulse. Not shadow. Not magic. It was a shard of divinity, a corrupted sliver of the god once buried beneath this world. A dead deity's fragment fused to Coran's soul. The priests chanted. The lake turned black. Coran's eyes rolled back. Rowyn reached into her satchel and ripped open her palm. "Stop," she gasped, blood streaming down her arm. "Stop." She slammed her palm against the water. Blood met mirror. Silver erupted. From her wound, tendrils of silver fire spiraled outward, crackling, singing with the voice of the first flame. It struck the chains, some snapped, some held. It struck the priests, some screamed, some stood. Rowyn screamed too. Her spine arched backward, and silver fissures bloomed across her arms, her neck, her back, like glowing flowers bursting from beneath her skin. It was too much. She coughed blood into the water. Coran thrashed, fighting not the chains, but himself. His claws tore through the lake, desperate to find her. But the bond between them had dimmed, cut by the spell the priests had cast. He couldn't feel her. Couldn't hear her. He was losing her. So she kissed him. Amid the chaos. Amid the blood. She pressed her lips to his. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was necessary. She poured herself into the kiss, into the bond, into the chasm the priests had torn open in his chest. And she took it. The dead god's shard. The piece of ruin trying to wake inside him. She dragged it into herself. She screamed again, this time silently, as the power erupted behind her eyes, scorching her veins, devouring her sanity in a bloom of divine madness. But she held. Barely. She held. The lake exploded. When Rowyn opened her eyes, she was on the shore again. The priests were gone. Vaporized. The lake was boiling, hissing into the night air. She lay on her side, her hand still loosely entwined with Coran's. He was unconscious. His skin burned, but healing. The mark on his chest dim. And her back. It ached. She rolled slightly, moaning, and saw her reflection in a pool of bloodied water. Silver vines etched her skin like veins made visible. Crawling from her shoulder blades, spreading down her spine, glowing beneath the torn fabric of her shirt. A sigil flared above her heart. One she didn't know. One not of blood or bone. One of divine containment. She had locked the god fragment within herself. And she couldn't tell him. He stirred beside her. "Rowyn," he croaked. She turned quickly, wiping blood from her mouth. "I'm fine." "You shouldn't be." "I said I'm fine." His eyes narrowed. The bond was dulled. He couldn't feel her emotions clearly. She had walled him out. "Something's wrong with you." "No more than usual." He grunted, rolling onto his side. "I felt you disappear. Like your soul flinched. You were dying. Maybe it was just fear." He stared at her for a long moment. But didn't push. Not yet. That night, they rested in the ruins of an old shrine. He kept watch. She watched him from under a threadbare cloak, her body shaking with aftershocks she dared not explain. She had saved him. But at what cost? Something inside her now burned too brightly, too wildly. Like a voice just beneath hearing, whispering not words, but want. Not lust. Not love. Hunger. Divine. Unnatural. Coran didn't see it. Didn't know. He touched her wrist once, gently. "Thank you," he murmured. She smiled. Even though it hurt. Just before dawn, she rose to wash her face in the shallows. The lake reflected not the sky, but a vision. A future she didn't understand. She saw herself kneeling before Coran. Her hand pressed to his chest. Her eyes filled with tears. Her voice, low, broken, saying, "I want you dead." And he looked at her, lips parted in disbelief. Not anger. Not betrayal. Just sorrow. From behind, the real Coran approached, silent. "What did you see?" he asked. She turned quickly. "Nothing," she lied. He stared into the lake. And in its broken mirror light, his own reflection whispered back, "Will you betray me, Rowyn?" Chapter 9. The Betrayer's Prayer. The wind that moved through the ruins of Viral House smelled of ghosts and rain. Once, this place had been a manor built of silverwood and moonstone, home to healers and scholars who had served no god but mercy. Now it was only ribs of ash. The forest had begun to swallow it, ivy crawling through shattered windows, roots splitting the marble stairs. Rowyn stood where the hearth had been, fingers brushing a charred beam. The scent of soot clung to her cloak, and through it all, faintly, she could still smell home: rosemary oil, parchment, Nemia's tea leaves. She shouldn't have come back. But she was running out of time. The mark beneath her skin was spreading faster each day, silver roots threading toward her throat. The god shard she had taken from Coran was devouring her, whispering whenever she closed her eyes. She heard footsteps crunching gravel behind her and turned. Nemia stood there, older and smaller than Rowyn remembered, her silver-gray hair tied back, her robes patched from years of exile. Her hands trembled as she reached out. "Rowyn," she breathed. "You look like a ghost." Rowyn almost laughed. "You taught me how to be one." They stood for a long moment, unsure if they were still friends or just memories shaped into flesh. Nemia finally stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here. The temple is searching for you. If they find you in these ruins—" "They won't," Rowyn cut in. "They think I'm dead. Thanks to you." That drew a wince. "I didn't tell them everything," Nemia said. "Not yet." Rowyn met her eyes. "Then tell me this. Can you still break a binding mark?" Nemia hesitated. "The kind the Bone King made?" "No one can." "I don't need it gone," Rowyn said, voice tight. "Just weakened. Enough that he can't feel me. Enough that I can breathe." Nemia studied her for a long time. "You're still bound to him." "Yes." "And you're still lying to him." Rowyn's throat constricted. "I had to." Nemia sighed. "Then come inside. The circle still works if the foundations haven't rotted completely." They descended into the cellar, where the walls glowed faintly from sigils etched long ago. The air smelled of salt and blood and iron. Nemia lit 3 candles, one for life, one for sacrifice, one for forgiveness, and began to draw the pattern across the floor with trembling chalk. "You'll lose a part of yourself," she warned. "Breaking even a fraction of the mark means severing what you've given him, your memories, your emotions, maybe your sense of what's real." "I've already lost that," Rowyn said. Nemia's hand faltered. "You love him." Rowyn's lips barely moved. "That's not love. That's infection." The older woman said nothing. She finished the circle, then gestured for Rowyn to kneel. Rowyn removed her gloves, bearing the sigil that had once shimmered like silver and now pulsed faintly crimson. She pressed her palms against the cold floor. "Repeat after me," Nemia whispered. "By my blood, I unbind what was bound in madness." Rowyn echoed the words, voice low, trembling. The room shuddered. The sigil flared. A sound like wings unfurling filled the space. Nemia stepped behind her, hands shaking. She drew a blade from her sleeve, a priest's athame, engraved with the moon's crest. Rowyn froze. "Nemia. I'm sorry." Rowyn twisted too late. The blade bit into her shoulder, shallow but enough. The circle changed. The runes pulsed with inverted light, blood curse reversal. "Don't fight it," Nemia cried, voice cracking. "If you struggle, it'll kill you faster." "You betrayed me." Rowyn's voice was barely human. "I had to." Nemia's tears fell onto the floor. "They took my family. My sons. I can save them if I give them you." "Then why lie?" "Because you're my friend," she whispered, collapsing to her knees. "And I wanted you not to hate me when I did it." The runes ignited. Pain tore through Rowyn's body like 1,000 knives made of light. The mark on her wrist flared, crawling up her neck, searing open new lines across her chest. Silver fire burst from her fingertips, spraying against the ceiling. Nemia screamed and shielded her eyes. The smell of burning flesh filled the room, Rowyn's, not from flame, but from her own magic devouring her. She fell backward, gasping. "I can't breathe." The blood she coughed glowed silver. It sizzled when it hit the stone. Through the haze of agony, she saw Nemia sobbing beside her. "Forgive me. Please forgive me." Rowyn tried to reach for her, but her hands wouldn't move. The world was dissolving, edges softening, color bleeding into white. Then darkness folded over everything. In the darkness, she dreamed. Coran stood before her, shadowed by firelight. Chains wrapped around his throat, his wrists, his heart. "You couldn't even let me die free," she said. He didn't answer. "Every breath I take belongs to you now. Every heartbeat, every thought. You called it fate, but it's just your fear of being alone." "Still nothing. Do you even know what it's like to be trapped in someone else's soul?" Her voice cracked. "You think you're cursed, but you're the one doing the cursing." When he looked up, his eyes were hollow. "Then hate me, if that's what keeps you alive." The dream shattered. She woke bound to an altar, wrists clamped by silver cuffs etched with runes that pulsed with her own heartbeat. The air reeked of sanctified oil and incense. A faint hum echoed from the walls, temple machinery buried under the ruins, grinding to life. Nemia was gone. In her place stood the twin agents of the temple, the double-faced envoys. One wore a mask of gold, the other of bone. Their movements were precise, inhuman, synchronized like puppets pulled by the same string. "The silver blood awakens," said the one with the gold mask. "The goddess will feed," said the one with bone. Rowyn tried to move. The cuffs tightened. "Where's Nemia?" she rasped. "Redeemed," they said together. She laughed weakly. "You mean dead." "Purified," corrected the bone mask. "By her own prayer." They began arranging instruments, glass vials, silver rods, the sacred brand used in the burning seal rite. Rowyn turned her head, eyes catching a sliver of reflection in one of the vials. A shadow hovered there. Not the envoys. Not her own. It was Malvith, the high priestess, her form half smoke, half smile. She leaned close, voice honeyed and venomous. "Coran will come for you," Malvith whispered. "He always does." Rowyn tried to snarl, but the blood in her mouth choked her words. Malvith's fingers ghosted across her cheek. "But understand, my dear, he won't come to save you. He'll come to retrieve what he thinks he owns. A weapon. A flame. Never a girl." The phantom smiled wider. "And when he finds what you've become, he'll wish you died in this room." The reflection faded. The chant began. The first iron rod seared into her skin. And Rowyn realized that betrayal could sound exactly like prayer. Chapter 10: The Ritual of Ashes. The wind at the top of the ashbound spire screamed like a living thing. It carried the stench of scorched bone and sacred oil, the bitter tang of iron prayer and old blood. Storm clouds churned above the high altar, violet-edged and hollow-eyed, casting long shadows across the jagged obsidian stone. Rowyn was bound in the center of the sacrificial dais. Her arms were pulled wide, wrists shackled with sigil-etched manacles, bare feet scraping against the sun-blackened slab. The blood that spilled from her back where the rods had pierced her shoulder blades did not fall. It hissed, evaporated, shimmered with silver light before burning away into the storm. Her chest rose and fell in ragged gasps. The circle around her had been drawn in salt and dusted with ash, relics of centuries-old rites. The symbol carved beneath her feet, a spiral pierced by a vertical fong, pulsed faintly, absorbing her blood. High above her, robes whipping like torn banners in the wind, stood the Grand Priestess Malvith Rowyn. Her headdress was forged from the skull of a sacred wolf. Her eyes were veiled in gauze, but glowed faintly beneath it, not with sight, but with knowing. Her hands, pale, long-fingered, precise, lifted a silver staff carved from an old god's rib. This one, Malvith intoned, was born with the mark, but not with the purpose. The watching priests murmured as one, repeating her words. She carries the silver fire not as a chosen, but as a fracture in the divine pattern. Her soul drags the threads of prophecy into error. The murmurs rose louder. She is anomaly. Aberration. Unwritten chaos. And so, she must be unwritten. Rowyn spat blood onto the altar. You're so terrified of me you had to write a ceremony to erase me? Malvith tilted her head, like a teacher observing a defiant student. This isn't fear, girl. This is balance. Balance. Rowyn laughed, a dry, cracking sound. You burned a village to find me. You bled children in your scriptoriums. You chained a boy to a throne of bones and called it divinity. What's balance to you? Slaughtering anything you can't control. Malvith stepped closer. Her voice was almost kind. We do not fear the unchosen. We fear the consequences of letting them believe they are chosen. She pressed the end of the silver staff to Rowyn's sternum. The sigils flared. And pain like nothing Rowyn had ever known, rushed up from her chest in a surge of white. The silver flame inside her twisted, screaming. Her veins glowed. Her fingers cracked open at the seams, light pouring from them. Her eyes rolled back, mouth open in a silent scream. They were stripping her power. No, worse. They were peeling her apart from it, rending her soul from the force that had once made her more than a girl, more than a healer, more than prey. She will be cleansed, Malvith said. Her soul will be offered back to the well of threads. Her name will be sewn back into silence. Priests around the circle began to chant. Rowyn gasped, body shaking. Her feet kicked once, reflexively. Then again, weaker. The fire dug deeper. In some far part of her mind, she felt her soul tremble, splinter, like cracked crystal under strain. No one was coming. No one could save her. Her breath shuddered in her chest, and for one horrible moment, she wanted it to stop. She wanted to let go. Let them have the fire. Let them burn it from her bones. Let them end the war before it ever began. Let Coran be free of her. Coran. She didn't even realize she had thought his name aloud, not in words, but in the silent scream between soul bonds. But something hurt her. Far beyond the spire, across the jagged mountains and cursed rivers, something ancient and furious stirred. A bond, stretched thin to its final strand, pulled taut. And snapped. Miles away, deep in the black reaches of the hollow vale, Coran's eyes snapped open. The silver thread in his mind that was Rowyn, always faint, always present, had vanished. No severance. No death. Extraction. His breath caught. Then the world turned red. The beast beneath his skin, long kept at bay, shattered free in an instant. Bones cracked as his form surged. Not wolf. Not man. Not God. Something older. His back arched, skin splitting along his spine as bone-wrought wings unfurled. A howl ruptured from his throat. No, not a howl. Something worse, something primal, deep. A sound the gods themselves had buried when they cast the first Bone Kings into exile. The skies tore open, and the black flame of the abyssal bloodline rose like a storm. Back atop the spire, Rowyn barely felt the world anymore. She was floating now. Her body, limp and twitching, radiated silver steam. Her hair floated like smoke around her, eyes half-lidded, lips pale and cracked. The power inside her was flickering, dying, flaring again only to sputter. Malvith raised her staff once more. "This is mercy," she said. "The world you nearly remade in your image will now forget your name." Rowyn blinked, and, through blurred vision, saw something flicker on the horizon. A light. No. A shape. Rising behind the storm clouds like a beast carved from nightmare, cloaked in bone and fire, its wings stretching across the heavens. The ground beneath the spire trembled. A crack split the dais. Priests began to shout. Malvith turned, eyes narrowing. Rowyn smiled. A cracked, bloody, broken smile. "He came," she whispered. The bindings on her wrists hissed. Her blood lit up again, surging despite the ritual. Not her own strength, his. He had poured it through the broken bond, forced his will back into her veins. Through flame. Through pain. Through love or something worse. Malvitha's voice rose in fury. "Seal the ritual. Complete the bind. Rowyn's eyes rolled back, and she passed out. Her final breath left her in a whisper. He came. Above the spire, a black wolf born of death and memory and vengeance slammed down from the sky with a scream that split heaven. The gods watched and flinched. Chapter 11: The Wolf Who Tore Heaven. The world burned beneath his feet. Flame clung to Coran's back like a living mantle, seething black and red, trailing in his wake as he walked through the shattered remains of the ash-bound spire. The obsidian pillars that once held God's scripts and death prayers lay in crumbled ruin, snapped like ribs. Ash fell from the sky in soft, steady flurries, like snow made from the bones of saints. Coran stepped over the body of an ink-seer, her throat gored open, silver sigils still flickering on her fingertips. Another priest lay twisted on a half-melted altar, eyes burned from his skull. A blood-stained trail cut through the bodies like a red thread, leading him deeper, ever deeper, toward the heart of the slaughter. His fingers were slick with blood. Not his. Not hers. Yet, the door to the sanctum lay in ruin, blasted outward by sheer force, not magic, not ritual. Rage. His. Inside, the ritual dais glowed faintly under the dying embers of sacred fire. And there, curled on the blackened stone, skin marred with brands, silver veins flickering like dying stars, was Rowyn. His knees hit the ground harder than he realized. Rowyn. She didn't move. Not at first. Then a tremor, small, like a leaf caught in wind. Her breath stuttered in her chest. Her eyelids fluttered, and he saw beneath them the faint glow of silver, waning like the final echo of moonlight before dawn. Her lips parted. A rasp of sound escaped. "You shouldn't have come." He exhaled, a broken, furious sound. "I told you." His arms slid under her body, and she was too light. Wrong light. Bones hollowed by burning. He cradled her against his chest, firelight reflecting off the blood streaked down her temple. "You said you wouldn't run." She gave a huff of breath that might have been a laugh, might have been a sob. "I wasn't running." Her voice fractured, and blood touched the corner of her mouth. Her head rolled against his shoulder. Panic, sharp and unyielding, pierced his chest. No. No. The bond was fraying again, not broken this time, but emptying. Her soul like a cup half spilled, and soon, nothing would be left. No. Coran's eyes darkened. He didn't ask for permission. Didn't beg the gods. Didn't hesitate. He kissed her. But it wasn't a kiss of affection or of passion. It was something older, darker, a ritual, half lost to time, buried beneath bone and curse. His lips pressed to hers, and behind the touch, power moved. From his mouth to hers. From his soul to hers. A breath. A light. Then agony. Rowyn arched in his arms with a strangled cry. Her back bent like she'd been struck with lightning. Silver fire roared up her spine. Her veins glowed again, not dimly now, but violently, blindingly. She screamed. Coran didn't flinch. She thrashed against him, eyes wild, mouth open, every nerve in her body alight with power too great for her broken shell to contain. Her nails clawed at his arms, not to push him away, but as if trying to anchor herself, to stop the sensation of dying again in a different direction. "You're killing me," she gasped. He didn't let go. "I'm giving you me," he said through clenched teeth. "You don't get to die. I won't allow it." "Why?" she rasped. "Why would you?" "Because it's mine," he growled. "Your pain. Your fire. Your fate. It's mine." Her body convulsed. The light burst from her fingertips, her mouth, her eyes. The flames surged higher. And then, stillness. Not peace. Just the eye of a storm. Her head dropped against him. Her breath came in sharp, broken gasps. Her skin was soaked in sweat and blood, glowing faintly under the ashes. "Don't you dare do that again," he whispered. She let out a sound between a sob and a laugh. "I didn't exactly plan it." Coran held her tighter. She felt warmer now. Not healed. but not fading. And yet, he could feel it. A tear. A crack in her soul, hastily patched by the peace he had given. It wouldn't last. Not unless they found something to replace what had been taken. He looked north. Past the ruins, past the mountain line, into the frozen vastness of Frostfall Rise. There was only one place left, one thing that might repair what the ash-bound spire had broken. The remnants of the silver flame progenitor. The last breath of the original fire. He stood, holding her gently. Her arms curled weakly around his neck. "Where are we going?" she murmured. "Home," he lied. Because she didn't need to know that where they were going, no fire had burned for centuries. Only bones. Only ice. Only wolves buried in snow and ancient oaths. Far behind them, the ashes of the spire still glowed. Among the ruin, fire coiled into unnatural shapes, curves, sigils, serpents of light and smoke. And from the center of the scorched altar, a vision flickered into being. Malvith Raylan's form shimmered in the flames. She stood in silence, veiled eyes fixed on the trail of burned stone where Coran had passed. She smiled faintly. "Fool," she whispered. "You tear down heaven to hold her." Her fingers brushed the edge of the broken altar. "But the closer you bring her to your heart," a breath of wind stirred the cinders, "the closer she is to the end." And with that, the vision scattered into ash. Chapter 12. The Bite of the Memory Wolf. The cradle of hollow hells lay beneath a sky streaked with dying auroras, a sacred ruin hidden within the northern frost spires, where the bones of wolves older than language whispered through stone. Snow clung to the edges of the broken arches and collapsed sanctums, muffling sound, softening death. Only the winds remembered the voices of those who held here long before men dared to call themselves gods. Rowyn lay still in the basin of the sanctified spring, limbs submerged beneath the silvery waters that glowed with faint pulses of ancient light. Her skin shimmered with healing sigils that spiraled outward from her chest, Coran's blood still anchored inside her, feeding the fractured remnants of her soul. But it was not enough. Because each night, something else woke with her. Altherin. The name came in a whisper, not from the living, but from deep within her dreams, a name she had never spoken, but somehow remembered. A black wolf. Red eyes. Silver fire teeth. A voice that bled through her sleep like a blade pressed against bone. "You burned me." The first time she heard it, she thought it was Coran. Thought it was guilt-given voice. But no, it was something older. "You promised me eternity. And gave me ash." That night, she woke gasping. The silver runes on her wrists had seared her skin. Her heart beat too fast. And in the darkness, across the spring, Coran stood unmoving, watching. She didn't tell him. But she should have. Because the second night, she screamed. In her sleep, she clawed at her chest, convulsing in pain. The waters hissed as silver fire cracked open her skin, and it was Coran's voice that finally dragged her from the dream. "Rowyn." She bolted upright, drenched in blood and light. Her breath came in gasps. Her lips trembled. Coran grabbed her wrists before she could strike again, eyes blazing. "What did you see?" Her mouth opened. Closed. Tears burned down her face. "It's not real," she whispered. "It's just a dream." "It's not. It's not just a dream." His voice was low. Cold. But not unfeeling. "I felt it." "You're not supposed to," she snapped. Her voice cracked like ice under weight. "You said the bond was quiet now." "You said." "I lied." He didn't look away. "I can't stop hearing you. Even when you scream in silence." She turned her face away, ashamed of the wetness on her cheeks. "Then break the bond. End it." "I will," he said softly, "if you ask me to." She paused. Her lips parted. But she didn't say the words. He took that silence like a blade to the ribs. That night, she fell asleep in silence. And Coran followed. Not in body, but in soul. He bled into her dreams like smoke through keyholes. He forced open the half-closed gates of the silver contract, reactivating the deep layer of the bond that let shared memory, shared madness, bleed across. He entered her nightmare. And he saw everything. He saw her walking across fields of fire, barefoot, her hair white with ash. He saw a great beast, blacker than midnight, its eyes burning with betrayal. He saw her kneel before it, then raise her hand. A silver blade. A kiss. A betrayal. And then the beast burned. Rowyn screamed. Coran moved before thought. He tackled her in the dream world, pinning her wrists, his own eyes wide with confusion and rage. "You killed him," he hissed. "I loved him." She writhed beneath him, their bodies burning with the clash of memory and desire. "I didn't mean to. I thought I could save him. I had to stop him before." "Before he became what?" "You." The word broke like thunder between them. Coran froze. Rowyn's chest heaved beneath him, her wrists pinned above her head. The dream realm around them pulsed, shadows of fire, wolves made of mist, echoes of oaths never spoken aloud. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes wide. "That's not what I meant." "You're not wrong." His voice dropped. Hollow. Resigned. "I am him." "No. I'm the echo of a curse you already gave once." "You're not." Her hands trembled in his. "Because this time, I won't choose the flame. I'll choose you." His breath hitched. He leaned in, and in the dream, time didn't exist. There was only them. The weight of prophecy and past and future all burning at once. He kissed her. Not gently. It was fury and desperation, fire and mourning. And she kissed him back like she wanted to burn again. In the dream, their hands found each other's scars. Their marks, bone for him, flame for her, flared. And as their bodies twined, they bit. Not lips. Not skin. They bit each other's bond. The place where soul met soul. Her mouth clamped over the knot at his collarbone, and his teeth sank into the side of her neck where the silver veins throbbed brightest. Pain bloomed. Blood wept. Flame crackled. The dream shattered. She woke in the spring screaming, his name raw on her throat. And Coran was there, breathing hard. Sweat gleamed on his skin. His eyes were blown wide with something between awe and terror. He cupped her face in his hands. "Rowyn." She pushed him back, still shaking. "I saw it," she whispered. "In the dream." He didn't ask what. "I will burn the world." He didn't flinch. "I'll become something else. Something worse than you ever were." He said nothing. "And you'll be the only one who can stop me." Still, he said nothing. Then she looked up, eyes blazing silver. "When that day comes, when I lose who I am, you have to kill me." He stared at her. Like he could reach in and tear the fate from her spine if it meant changing it. And then, with quiet fury, he said, "You die over my ashes." A pause. "And before that, I'll make the gods choke on theirs." Chapter 13. The Witch's Pact. The mists of the Vale of Sighing Ferns curled like ghost fingers around Rowyn's boots as she stepped past the final warding stone. The moon barely touched the ground here, its light smothered by the dense canopy and heavy silence, broken only by the distant rustle of unseen creatures and the hollow hush of water dripping from fern to moss. She had slipped away before dawn, leaving Coran still sleeping or pretending to. The bond between them, frayed and ragged after nights of dreams and confessions too sharp to be undone, had grown quiet. Too quiet. And in that silence, she had heard something else. A whisper. A name. Illyra. The locals spoke of her in half-tones, a witch with silver-veined eyes and no past, living alone in a place no sane map kept. They said she traded in forgotten things. Hope. Memory. Curses. And Rowyn, desperate, had come with all three. She found the witch seated by a fire of colorless flame. A kettle steamed beside her, its scent sharp with fennel and crushed pine. Her eyes flicked up before Rowyn spoke, already waiting. "You've been dreaming of endings," Illyra said. Rowyn stiffened. "You know who I am?" No one comes here unless they're already unmade. The woman's hair was a spill of shadow, streaked through with starlight. Her robes were not woven but seemed grown from fog, shifting with every breath. Her voice was soft, wrong somehow, like an echo that didn't belong to the body that birthed it. "I need to stop something," Rowyn said. "A future. A fire. You want to cage a destiny written in blood." Rowyn swallowed. "Yes. Then you already know the price." A pause. Rowyn's fingers curled tight around the edge of her cloak. "You mean the bond?" "Your soul has grown roots," Illyra said, rising slowly. "And you would ask me to cut them?" "I didn't come here to kill him." "No," the witch said, circling Rowyn slowly. "Just to kill the part of you that reaches for him." Rowyn flinched. "He's not just a man anymore," Illyra whispered. "You know this. You've seen it, what he becomes when you fall. What he does to the world." "I know." Illyra stopped before her, hand extended. "Then choose. Give me the contract. Let me take the silver threads from your heart and bind them into a cage strong enough to contain the coming fire." "And if I refuse?" The fire cracked, casting shadows like bleeding scars across the stones. "You will burn everything," Illyra said simply. For a long moment, Rowyn said nothing. Her breath trembled. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She thought of Coran's hand pressed to her throat the night they first kissed, trembling not from desire but fear. His voice in the dream when he whispered, "You're mine, or nothing survives." The look in his eyes when she bled for him. The feel of his kiss not as a promise, but a wound. She thought of the future. Herself in silver flame. The land devoured. The end of all things. She thought of the prophecy. Only love can stop her. Only love can end her. And what if she removed that love? Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too much. She dropped to her knees before the fire. Tears slid silently down her cheeks as she unfastened the clasp at her collar, drawing her shirt apart until the mark of the contract gleamed on her chest, faintly silver, beating in sync with a heart not entirely her own anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The knife she pulled from her belt was dull, but her hand was steady. One cut. Deep. A spiral along the rune. She gasped. Blood welled, not red, but silver gold, pulsing with heat. "I don't do this because I stopped loving you," she choked out, staring into the fire as her blood hit the stones. "I do it because I love you too much." The witch crouched before her, expression unreadable. "Very well," Illyra murmured. She reached forward with her hand, which had turned translucent, spectral, fingers elongated like spider legs. She placed them over the wound and drew forth a sliver of light from Rowyn's chest. It pulsed violently in the air between them. "Half the bond," Illyra intoned. "Half the soul. The love without the ache. The flame without the match." She placed it into a mirror, an obsidian shard hung with silver chains, etched with symbols that twisted as they moved. The second the light touched the glass, the surface rippled and Rowyn screamed. Far away, in the high plains of Frostfall Rise, Coran fell to his knees with a roar, his hands clutching his chest. Blood leaked from his nose, and his eyes glazed white. He howled, once, long and broken, and collapsed into the snow. Back in the Vale, Rowyn lay gasping on her side, tears staining the moss. Illyra stood, brushing her palms together. "That will do." Rowyn turned her face to the fire, shaking, her wound still raw. "I don't feel him." "Good. That's not a relief." "No. But it's necessary." Illyra moved toward the shadows, her back now to Rowyn. She held the mirror up, and her reflection flickered. Then changed. Her face stretched, twisted, became something other. Bones beneath skin. Silver eyes ringed in darkness. A mouth too wide. In the mirror, Malvith smiled. "One piece claimed," he said, voice purring through Illyra's lips. "Now the board is set." He looked back once toward the weeping girl near the fire, the shell of something once whole. "Sleep well, little herald," he whispered. "Soon, even the gods will kneel." Chapter 14. The Day He Forgot Her. The wind at Bonevale Crest was a blade that cut without bleeding. It howled through the skeletal pine trees, combed the snowdrifts into hollow spines, and wrapped its sharpness around every breath Rowyn took as she staggered through the white. Her blood had long since dried beneath her skin, but something deeper kept leaking out, quietly, constantly, the color of grief. She saw him before he saw her. Coran stood motionless at the cliff's edge, his cloak torn open, the great bone-sculpted pauldrons along his back dusted with frost. His hands were bare, hanging loose at his sides. No blade drawn. No rage, not yet. But he wasn't alone. A flickering shadow lingered near him, at first barely visible. Then sharper. Malvith. Not in body, but illusion, woven through the fog like a parasite with a priest's voice. Rowyn pressed a hand to her chest, the place where the bond used to burn. There was only silence now, and an ache that no longer had a name. She stepped forward. Coran. He didn't turn. His gaze remained fixed on the void before him, the sky stretching far and pale. Coran, she tried again, louder, voice catching against the wind. It's me. Rowyn. He moved. Slowly. His head tilted, then he turned half toward her, brows drawn in confusion. His eyes, those endless, flaring things of frost and ancient fire, narrowed. There was no recognition. Stay back. His voice was a low growl. Rowyn froze. It's me, she whispered. You know me? You. I don't know you. The words landed like stones in her throat. She stumbled forward anyway. You do, she pleaded. Please, whatever they did to you, whatever he said. A pulse of bone flame shimmered across his skin. His aura twisted, violent and reactive, rising like a defense. And when she came too close, he struck. Not by choice, not even with intent. It was reflex, pure and automatic. A sliver of bone lashed from his arm like a whip and cut across her shoulder, sending her spinning into the snow. The pain flared, but it was nothing compared to the crack that opened in her heart as she looked up at him. He didn't move. Didn't even seem to realize what he'd done. He just watched her, dazed, confused, as if the blow had been someone else's hand. Why? His voice broke faintly. Why are you crying? Because you hurt me. Because you forgot me. Because I would have died for you, and now you'd kill me without even knowing my name. I'm not your enemy, she choked out. He shook his head slowly, fingers twitching like he was trying to remember a shape they once knew. She is the trap, came a whisper on the wind. Malvith's voice, rich with poison. The illusion coiled behind Coran's shoulder like a shadow given teeth. She is the shackle. The weakness. The bond that keeps you from your full birth. Cut it away. Be king. Be God. Coran flinched, grabbing his head. Get out. Rowyn crawled closer despite the blood running down her arm. You fought gods for me, she whispered. You tore down the sky. You burned the world. Don't let him erase that. He turned to her slowly. And for a second, his eyes shifted, pain shimmered at the edges. But then it was gone. His hand raised again. This time, deliberate. And Rowyn stopped crawling. She knelt, breathing hard, hair clinging to her face in wet strands, frost curling at her lashes. Her voice dropped to something ragged and quiet. Then do it. His hand hovered, fingers flexed into a half-formed claw of bone. Kill me, she said. If that's what you need. If I'm the trap. If you're better without me. The bone blade shimmered. Kill me, Coran, she said again, softer. But know this, every time you reach into the dark, it was my hand that pulled you back. Every time you broke, I was the one who bled. So if you're going to bury me, do it knowing it was love that died with me. He stared. The wind shrieked between them. And then, something fractured. His arm trembled. The bone blade dissipated, crumbling into ash. He breathed. He dropped to one knee, fingers clutching at the snow like a drowning man. His breath stuttered. Why, do I want to cry? Rowyn moved slowly, pressing her bleeding hand against the snow, dragging herself to him inch by inch. When she reached him, she didn't touch him. Not yet. I'm Rowyn, she whispered. And you loved me. His breath hitched. I don't. I can't. It's okay. Her voice cracked. We'll do it again. I'll make you love me again. At last, she reached out and brushed his knuckles. He didn't pull away. His gaze lifted to hers. There was no recognition. But there was a question. A need. Far behind them, at the ridge where shadow met wind, Malvitha's illusion watched in silence. His smile was thin and cruel. Start over, he murmured. Little mortal, he said, vanishing back into mist, you think this is a fairy tale? Rowyn ignored the cold. She pulled Coran into her arms, feeling the tremor in his spine, the hollow of him that used to belong to her, and held him, as if she could pour the memory back in with nothing but her body and breath. Chapter 15. The Pact of the Ash Crown. The descent into the heart of the hollow flame was a slow crucifixion. Heat pressed against Rowyn's skin like a whisper that would not stop. The molten stone beneath her boots hissed with old magic, and the walls of the cavern pulsed like the lungs of something too ancient to die. Coran walked beside her in silence. He followed, but not because he remembered everything, only fragments had returned. Names tangled in dreams. Emotions burned into his muscles. The sound of her voice in his sleep, like a lullaby of knives. It wasn't enough. Not for her. Here, Rowyn said, voice steady despite the sweat gleaming at her temples. This is where we do it. The chamber opened like the maw of a god. The molten well at the center glowed with a color that wasn't fire, silver touched with the ash of bone. Coils of vapor swirled upward, each one laced with soul fragments older than language. Coran paused. What is this place? The last place the wolves bowed to the flame, Rowyn answered. And where memory can be rewritten if you're willing to pay. His gaze turned to her, slow and sharp. What did you pay to bring me here? She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped onto the blackened platform above the well, her fingers unfastening the leather strap across her collarbone. Her outer cloak fell, revealing the scars down her back, silver threaded lashes from the blood rituals at the ash-bound spire. Coran's jaw clenched. You don't need to. I do. She turned toward him, eyes luminous in the firelight. You gave me your soul once. Now it's my turn. The runes carved into the obsidian pulsed as she knelt, placing her palm to the stone. A low hum began to rise. Silver flame flickered across her skin, not a power, but a sacrifice. It peeled away layer by layer, devouring the part of her that was mortal. Coran surged forward. Rowyn, stop. She looked back, eyes glowing silver, voice soft. You don't remember us, but I do. And if I have to be the one to remember forever, I'll pay that price. The flames rose around her like petals blooming. A ring of light circled her chest, right over the place where the old contract had once lived. By name and flame, I sever my path to rebirth, she said, words trembling in the hollow air. Let my soul burn clean, so his memory may return. The well roared. Silver fire surged upward, slammed into her spine, and then arced toward Coran. It hit him square in the chest. He staggered back, eyes wide, the heat flooding through him like a tidal wave of every forgotten touch, every whispered word, every wound and kiss and battle and promise that had passed between them. The first memory to return was her laughter. The second was her scream. The third, her kiss under blood moonlight, trembling and defiant. He dropped to his knees. Rowyn, his voice cracked. She was crumpled on the stone now, shivering, smoke rising from her hands. Her lips were split, blood running from the corner of her mouth, but she looked at him with a softness he didn't deserve. You remember? She whispered. Coran crawled to her, wrapped his arms around her, and pressed his forehead to hers, shaking. You're a fool, he breathed. How could you? Why would you? Her fingers brushed his cheek. You're the only home I ever had. He let out a broken noise, something between a sob and a growl. His arms tightened. You shouldn't love me. Loving me is a curse. Then why, she murmured, eyes fluttering shut, do you keep saving me? He didn't answer. He just held her. For the first time in his long, haunted life, he cried, not for pain or vengeance, but because someone had given him love without asking anything back. They lay there together, breath sinking slowly, bodies marked with the new rune rising between them, a burn etched into both of their chests, pulsing like a brand. Not a bond of choice. A covenant. A pact of ash and flame. They didn't notice the cost right away. But the moment their fingers laced, the runes on their skin shimmered too brightly, and a flare of light streaked between them, slicing the air with a warning. From now on, every time they drew on the bond, one of them would inch closer to death. That was the shape of the ash crown. The curse of immortality, now shared. Far away, in the ruins of the spire, a mirror cracked. Within its shards, Malvatha's face emerged, split by a slow, satisfied smile. He touched the glass. Good, he whispered. They've tied the noose themselves. His eyes gleamed. Now let's see how long they survive it. Chapter 16, The Mirror That Weeps Blood. The sky had no stars in the weeping glass. It was a dome of molten mirror, dripping slow threads of crimson light, as if the heavens themselves bled regrets. The ground pulsed like glass filled with veins. Every step Coran and Rowyn took rang with the sound of broken truths. They said nothing as they passed through the obsidian archway. The trial had no gatekeeper, no threshold chant, only the silence that knew their names too well. Rowyn's hand brushed Coran's for the briefest second, then the world tore. No sound. No wind. Just a scream frozen behind Coran's teeth as his vision splintered into 1,000 bleeding shards. He landed hard. The world around him was not the trial chamber. It was snow. Ice. Bone veil crust. He knew this memory. Except this time, Rowyn stood before him, silver-flamed and radiant, her hair flickering like wildfire. And her hand was raised. Don't come closer, she said. Her voice was the same and yet wrong. There was no tremble in it. No pain. No softness. Just fire. You'll ruin everything, she said again. Coran took a breath. Rowyn. She hurled a wave of silver flame at him. It struck like a god's wrath. His ribs cracked. Smoke poured from his chest. He screamed. Not in pain, but because the one person he would die to protect had just tried to kill him. Across the veil, Rowyn dropped to her knees. Her hands were soaked in blood, his blood. Coran's body slumped at her feet, throat crushed, bones shattered. Her own hands trembled from the pressure of what she'd done. Her fingers had been around his neck. He hadn't fought back. Not once. I didn't, she whispered. But the truth curled in the mirror behind her. A whisper. You will. 1,000 shards of glass floated above them both in their mirrored prisons, replaying variations of their deaths. In some, she incinerated him. In others, he bled her dry. One shard even showed them locked in a kiss that turned to ash. They were fighting different phantoms. But the feeling was the same, betrayal. Coran stumbled to his feet inside his illusion, shaking off the next wave of flame. His blade was already in his hand, though he hadn't drawn it. Rowyn's face twisted. You always knew I'd burn you, didn't you? His mouth moved before he could stop it. If it's you, then let me burn. The dream wavered. In her own vision, Rowyn heard that sentence like a whisper. Her heartbeat skidded. Coran's illusion stepped closer. You loved me like a weapon. Rowyn blinked. Wait. She raised her hand, and the illusion's shadow didn't follow. Coran, she breathed. Somewhere, far across the shattering world, Coran paused mid-swing. The Rowyn in front of him shimmered. He narrowed his eyes. The way she stood. The tremble in her left hand. The way her throat pulsed when she swallowed pain. Real. It was her. Rowyn, he said, hoarse. Stop. But she was already moving. She tackled him to the ground, their bodies crashing into mirrored gravel. Flame coiled from her mouth to his collarbone, but it didn't burn. It warmed. Recognition bloomed behind his ribs like a bruise unraveling. Rowyn gripped his collar. "I saw you kill me. I saw you burn me alive." She laughed. Or sobbed. He couldn't tell the difference. "This place is using us against each other." "Worse," Coran murmured. "It's using the truth." Because deep down, they both feared it. Feared what they'd do to each other. Feared that love was not strong enough to undo the damage already written in blood. Rowyn pressed her forehead to his, tears sliding silently down her face. "If you stop trusting me," she said, voice cracking, "then I don't have anywhere left to go." Coran's arms wrapped around her. Tight. Final. Like drowning and choosing not to breathe. "I do trust you," he whispered. "Even when I shouldn't." The world groaned. Mirrors cracked. The illusions flickered, then burst, glass shattering into rain. They fell back onto real stone, gasping, clawing for air. The weeping glass around them hissed, melting away the last of the phantasms. Across the broken mirror wall, a face formed. Not a reflection. A watcher. Illyra. But not as they had known her. The mask of the kind, scattered which fell away like snakeskin, and beneath it was Malvith. Not fully, just a sliver. A smile. Eyes too old for any one face. "So touching," she said, voice echoing with layered tones, "woman, man, God. But do you truly think love is strong enough to endure what's coming?" Coran bared his teeth. "We endured your curse." Malvith didn't blink. "You endured each other. That was the real test." Rowyn's hand slid into Coran's. "Then we passed." Malvith tilted her head. "Did you?" The mirror darkened. A final shard flared to life. It showed a future. Rowyn, cloaked in silver wildfire, walking across a blackened highland. Villages lay in cinders behind her. Mountains cracked from the heat. Her eyes were gone, just glowing pits of divinity. Coran stood before her, shirtless, broken, smiling through the fire curling around him. She touched his face one last time. Then the fire devoured him. Rowyn gasped. Coran did not look away. "That will never happen," she whispered. Malvith smiled. "It already did." The mirror shattered. But the seed of the vision was planted. Coran looked down at their joined hands, still warm from the bond that had barely survived the trial. And Rowyn looked at the ashes rising in the air, whispering things she couldn't unhear. Because even now, even together, she wasn't sure if she could stop what she would become. Chapter 17. The Night the Moon Burned. Moonlight gathered like breath held too long. It pooled at the center of the ancient altar, suspended above stone and silence. The floating ring of the moonwake altar pulsed with forgotten power, each rune flickering with light that did not belong to this time, this world, this love. Coran stood at the edge of it all, watching Rowyn tremble. She was barely holding herself together. Her knees scraped the time-worn stone, silver flames still coursing beneath her skin like veins made of starlight and agony. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused, blinking as if she weren't sure where, or who, she was anymore. The illusions had done more than fracture her mind. They had begun to unravel her soul. She won't last another night, the memory of Altherin had warned. If you don't seal her, she will burn from the inside out. But sealing her meant something irreversible. It meant no more walls. No more boundaries. No escape. He stepped forward, and Rowyn flinched. The contract sigils on her arms flared to life, trying to repel him. Her body didn't recognize safety anymore. "I'm here," he said quietly. She turned her head. Her lips were cracked, bloodied. "You shouldn't be," she whispered. "You always come too close when I'm the most dangerous." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm not leaving." He knelt in front of her. The altar responded, humming beneath their feet. Coran reached for her hands, burned, shaking, glowing faintly with the silver ghost of her power. "Tonight's a full moon," he murmured. "It's the only chance we have." If we bind completely, your soul will anchor. You'll stop unraveling. Her throat worked. And you? He didn't answer. Because the truth was cruel. If her soul anchored in his, and his into hers, they wouldn't just share pain. They'd share fate. Live or die. Rise or fall. Together. No retreat, Rowyn said hoarsely. No undoing. Coran looked into her eyes. Would you undo us? Tears sprang to her lashes. I want to. Gods help me, I want to. Then don't, he whispered. The circle flared around them. Light burst upward from the runes, forming a cage of lunar brilliance. They stood, slowly, as if moving through deep water. Clothes fell away. Not with lust. With necessity. Skin had to meet skin. Mark had to meet mark. Their bond would be forged in flesh, in flame, and in blood. As the first light of the moon arced directly above them, Rowyn gasped and staggered. The contract etched into her spine surged, alive, reacting to Coran's presence. I'm ready, she said, voice trembling. No, you're not, he said, stepping closer. But I'll catch you when it breaks. Their chests met. The heat began. Silver fire unfurled from her sternum. Black bone markings shimmered across his back. The twin symbols of flame and fong ignited simultaneously, sparking arcs of raw contract magic between their bodies. It didn't burn around them. It burned through them. Rowyn cried out, falling forward. Coran caught her, only to buckle as her power ripped into him. The ritual had begun. They slammed into the stone together, bodies tangled, breath stolen by the raw force of the contract sealing. Their spines arched as the magic carved itself into bone. Rows of runes, ancient, sacred, irreversible, etched down their backs and into their very marrow. Rowyn's fingers clenched his shoulders. Her nails dug in deep enough to draw blood. Coran didn't flinch. When the bone hooks emerged, black thorns extending from his spine to hers, seeking anchor, Rowyn gasped, pain mixing with something darker, deeper. Then came the biting. Rowyn bared her neck. Coran hesitated for only a second. Then his fangs sank into the side of her throat, not gently. It was instinct. A brutal, protective claim, one meant to anchor her here, to him, to this life. She bled, then shuddered, and turned her head. Her lips found the crook of his neck. She bit him. Not softly. Not like a kiss. Like a promise. Like defiance. Like, I'll love you even if it kills us both. They both collapsed onto the altar, breaths ragged. The flames rose around them, curling higher. Their bodies writhed against each other, slick with sweat, bound by power, by choice, by desperation. It was not beautiful. It was sacred. Violent. Divine. Rowyn sobbed once and still smiled. I'm not afraid, she murmured, chest heaving. Not if I'm with you. Even if it ends in fire. Coran looked down at her, dazed, bloodied. Don't say that. She grinned through tears. I'll always say that. The altar cracked. From the center of the stone, roots of silver shot outward. The ancient tree at the heart of the floating moon altar, dormant for centuries, burst from the stone. Its branches reached for the sky, ignited with silver blossoms of sacred flame. The first joining of the white wolf and the flame bearer had been here. Now, history repeated itself. Rowyn touched the bark of the newborn tree. It was warm, beating like a heart. Coran crumpled beside her. Coran. He didn't answer. She turned him over and screamed. His lips were blue. His body limp. His soul had poured too much into the seal. Her survival had cost him something terrible. No, 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 she whispered, pulling him to her chest. Stay here. Stay with me. I didn't do all this to lose you. He stirred once. His eyelids fluttered. She wept, forehead pressed to his. I love you, she whispered. You're not allowed to die. Above them, the silver flames hissed. Then cracked. A sound like a soul splitting in half. Rowyn's eyes snapped upward. The tree split open. From its hollow center stepped a figure. A boy. Or no, not a boy. Something older. Wiser. Wrong. He had Coran's face. Pale skin. White hair that shimmered like bone dust. And he wore a cloak of skeletal remains. Who? Rowyn choked out, clutching Coran's unconscious body. The figure stepped onto the altar, barefoot, silent. I am the first imprint, he said softly. His voice echoed with ages. I am the soul before the soul. I am the crown that never sleeps. Rowyn shook her head. You're lying. I am the true Bone King, he said. And then he smiled slowly. And I've come to reclaim what he stole. Chapter 18, The Other Coran. It was the way he smiled. Soft. Familiar. A half-lilt at the corner of his mouth that always came just before he said something cruel in the name of love. Rowyn stood still in the hush of the Silver Flame Grove, where silver-leafed trees whispered with the language of ancient power. The ground pulsed faintly beneath her bare feet, the aftershock of the binding ritual still reverberating through every root and stone. And he was standing before her again. Coran. Alive. Awake. Whole. Or so he claimed. Rowyn's heart thrashed in her chest. The real Coran lay unconscious at the base of the altar behind her, his body still warm, but unmoving. She had dragged him there herself. His blood was on her fingers, his name still tangled in her throat. Yet this other version of him had stepped from the broken heart of the silver flame tree like a ghost reborn. Same eyes. Same voice. Same mouth. Don't look so afraid, he said. It's me. He moved toward her, each step silent on the ash-soft moss. The silver canopy above shimmered like moonlight caught in glass. I don't believe you, she whispered. The not Coran tilted his head. Then why haven't you run? Because it felt like him. Because her soul, already splintered and half-bound, reached toward him as if remembering something ancient. Coran is behind me, she said, voice tight. Unconscious. Dying. You're not him. I am what he was, the copy said gently. Before the contracts. Before the burden. Before you. Rowyn's breath hitched. That's not a kindness. His smile didn't waver. You always wanted the part of him that didn't fight you. The part that could be soft. This is that part. He stepped closer. Her body responded, without permission. Her skin ached toward him. Her heart twisted. Stop, she breathed, taking a step back. He followed. Not fast. Not forceful. Just enough. You're tired, Rowyn. You've carried too much, he said, and there was that voice, Coran's voice, in a tone she'd only ever imagined. Gentle. Tender. Loving. You shouldn't have to burn to keep him alive. Her fists clenched. Don't use his voice to say things he never would. I'm saying what he never could, the false Coran said, eyes glinting silver. Let me take the weight. Give me the core. I'll carry it. I want to carry it. Rowyn's chest heaved. The silver flame core, a fragment of her soul wrapped in living fire, pulsed at her center, curled beneath her ribs. It called to him. She could feel it shifting, reaching. You don't have to fight anymore, he whispered. Give it to me, and I'll end this. And God's part of her wanted to. Because what if he was right? What if this was the piece of Coran she had broken, and now fate was offering her one last chance to hold it gently? She trembled. If I give it to you, and you're not him, then you'll forget, he said simply. Forget the pain. Forget the fire. You'll only remember love. Her fingers rose, trembling toward her chest. The seal began to flicker, responding. He watched her like a lover would. With patience. With ache. Rowyn, he murmured. Choose peace. Her lips parted. And then she saw it. A small thing. A detail. So slight she might have missed it if she hadn't memorized him like scripture. The not Coran's face was still. Perfect. Too perfect. He didn't frown. He never frowned. But her Coran, he always frowned when he looked at her. Out of fear, or frustration, or some terrible, wounded kind of affection he didn't know how to name. He never looked at her without a crease between his brows. She lowered her hand. The false Coran blinked. What are you? Frown, she whispered. His head tilted. I said, frown. Show me your hymn. But he just stared. She smiled. It was cracked. It was broken. But it was hers. You can copy his face, she whispered. But not his grief. And then she lit herself on fire. Her silver flames surged upward from her chest, through her veins, and out through her skin in a violent blaze that shattered the silence of the grove. The pain was immediate. Absolute. Beautiful. The not Coran screamed, not with agony, but with rage. His form wavered. Cracked. Rowyn stumbled forward, flesh peeling, eyes bleeding light. Come on, she whispered into the fire. If he's still in there, feel me. The grove split down the center. Behind her, the real Coran's body twitched. A gasp. His eyes flew open, black and silver colliding in their depths. Rowyn screamed again, pouring every last ounce of her power into the flames between her hands. Coran, she roared. And he was there. His soul, half ripped, barely tethered, answered. His body surged upward. A lance of bones split the ground between them and the false one. The not Coran turned, too late. The bone pierced him through the chest. He didn't die like a man. He shattered like glass. The illusion broke. Flesh turned to smoke. The voice that had whispered all the things she wanted to hear dissolved into a scream that wasn't his. Then silence. Rowyn collapsed. Her breath came in gasps. Her arms were blistered. Her skin peeled in places. Her core had nearly consumed itself. She heard footsteps. Real ones. Not soft. Heavy. Dragging. And then, warmth. A touch. Rough fingers brushed her burnt fingertips. They trembled. You're insane, Coran said, voice hoarse. Absolutely, God's damned insane. She cracked open her eyes. And smiled. Told you, she rasped. I burned first. He didn't speak. He just sank beside her, forehead pressing to hers. Their bond flared, stabilizing barely. She sighed. I knew it wasn't you. Coran's brow furrowed. How? You always frown, she said. Even when you want to kiss me. He closed his eyes. I do want to kiss you. She chuckled. Then do it. He did. It was messy. Desperate. Tasting of smoke and blood and everything they'd lost. When they pulled apart, the trees above rustled. A shadow moved at the top of the canopy. Malvith. Cloaked in silver-threaded black, perched like a bird of prophecy in a tree that should have burned. You've done well, he said, voice like silk soaked in venom. You'll have everything you want. Rowyn struggled to sit up. Malvith smiled coldly. And then, he said, I'll take it all. Then he vanished like mist under moonlight. And the silver flame grove began to whisper. Not words, but warnings. Chapter 19, The Trial of the Last Fire. They stepped into the Court of Legends. The Last Flame Court did not announce itself with grandeur, nor did it rise from the mountain in thunder or fire. It simply was. A cavernous void carved into the remains of the first silver flame tree, its twisted branches petrified into stone, each limb scorched with whispers of fire that had never truly died. No walls. No sky. Just a ring of slow-burning silver that pulsed with the breath of ancient judgment. Rowyn's fingers were still wrapped around Coran's, their bond humming low, steady. But as soon as they passed through the arch of bone and ash, their hands were torn apart, violently, by a force unseen. She staggered back with a gasp. He lunged toward her, snarl half-formed, and the world went silent. The trial had begun. Rowyn stood alone, encircled by shadow. No sound. No flame. Just a stillness that scraped against the inside of her skull. Then a voice, not hers, not Coran's, curled into her mind. Can you end the one you love, to save the world they will burn? Her mouth dried. Her legs trembled. No, she said. I won't. The silence left. And the vision came. She stood on a battlefield. Not future, not past, inevitable. The sky was split by lightning, and the earth burned not with war but with her. Silver fire poured from her hands, her eyes, her soul. She screamed, not with rage, but with madness. And in front of her, Coran, burned, bleeding, crawling toward her with a sword of bone in his hand, refusing to strike. "Stop me," she screamed in the vision, silver flame devouring everything behind her. Coran didn't. The real Rowyn, standing outside the vision, crumpled to her knees. She could see herself in the dream, inhuman, howling, flames out of control. She believed it, because part of her already feared it was true. And the only way to stop her. A silver dagger appeared in her palm. End it. End the fire. Her hands shook. She looked up. In the vision, the flaming Rowyn turned toward Coran. Her future self raised her hand to strike. And in that moment, Rowyn stabbed herself. Reality splintered. The vision cracked like glass dropped on stone. She hit the ground, screaming, but not in pain. In choice. Across the court, Coran stood beneath a burning sky. His vision was quiet. Too quiet. Rowyn stood in the center of a ruined city, covered in blood that was not her own. Her body glowed with silver light, too bright, too pure. Her eyes were blank. Her mouth murmured names, names of the dead, names of children and elders and enemies. She stepped over corpses. She did not flinch. He knew this dream. He had seen it in flashes before, during her nightmares. Now he was inside it. And she turned. Smiled. Her face was not hers anymore. Or perhaps it was her true face, the one buried beneath pain and fate and prophecy. She walked to him. "You promised," she whispered. "I did," he said. "If I became a monster, I'd kill you," he whispered. A bone blade appeared in his hand. He looked at it, then at her. She didn't stop. She reached for him. And he dropped the blade. "No," he said. She blinked, then struck him. The fire tore through his chest, straight through his ribs, into the place their bond once lived. He gasped, pain blooming like a second heart. But even as he burned, even as his knees hit the ground and he tasted blood, he caught her wrist and whispered, "You are still you." The trial shattered. They fell, not back into the court, not into light, but down, deeper than dreams, deeper than death, into a realm of ash and black flame, where no breath could be drawn, where no light could reach. The black fire prison. Rowyn screamed as she tumbled through smoke. Coran was beside her, trying to reach her hand, but the wind ripped them apart again, dragging their souls like fabric through a grinder. Then stillness. Not silence, never silence. The screams of others echoed around them. Others who had failed. Rowyn opened her eyes and saw the void above her pulsing red, as if the sky itself bled. Coran was beside her, barely breathing, his skin laced with ghostly fire. She reached for him. He stirred. Their fingers touched. And something opened. Not a door. A memory. Not their memory. Someone else's. The flame bent inward, forming a window in the dark. And they saw it. A man, cloaked in silver ash, holding a woman wrapped in twilight veils. His hands trembled. She was already burning. Not with fear. With acceptance. "I love you," she whispered. "I know," he answered. And then he kissed her. And lit her on fire. The flame screamed louder than her voice ever could. The man did not weep. He watched. Until the flames consumed everything, including him. The vision flickered, blurred. Rowyn's breath caught. Was that? Coran's jaw was clenched. No name, no legend ever said Malvith loved. Rowyn's voice shook. "Because love makes monsters." "No," Coran said. "Because love makes martyrs." Another ripple through the fire. The voice returned. "You failed the trial. But you found the truth. A new path opens, for those who choose to lose everything." They looked at each other. Still burning. Still broken. Still together. Rowyn's voice was barely a whisper. Malvith, he didn't want to destroy the world. Coran nodded once. He wanted to bring someone back. And in the dark, beneath the fire, a new flame sparked. Pale. Small. But alive. Chapter 20. The Lovers Buried in Ashes. The ash beneath them wasn't silent. It breathed. Rowyn could hear it, like something ancient drawing breath through a throat full of cinders. Every inhale dragged across her skin. Every exhale filled her lungs with memories that weren't hers. She knelt beside Coran in the cold of the ash-bound crypt, her fingers still laced with his. Their bond flickered, more flame than thread now, but it held. For now, ash coated the floor like snow, thick and soft, hiding the bones beneath. Silver light pulsed faintly above them, the last remnants of their trial's illusion shimmering and dying. Then the temperature dropped. Not cold, but absence. Of fire. Of light. Of time. Coran stiffened beside her. And from the far end of the chamber, the ash rose. It didn't swirl like wind or burn like flame. It rose, shaped by a will not of this world. It coalesced into a figure, tall and narrow, robed in shadows that still smoldered at the hems. His face was no longer hidden by illusions, no longer veiled by avatars. It was Malvith. His eyes were no longer eyes, just pits of memory. His mouth barely moved, yet the crypt heard every word. "Welcome to the end of my story," he said. Coran stood slowly, every inch of him tense. "You've manipulated us since the beginning." Malvith's expression didn't change. "Did I? Or did you follow a path already carved into your bones?" Rowyn's voice cracked. "You copied us." No, Malvith's gaze shifted to her, and for one terrible moment, there was something like grief in it. "You copied me." He raised his hand. The walls of the crypt shivered. Then lit up. Not with flame, but with scenes. Fractured, scattered images began to flicker across the ashen surfaces, echoes of another time, another pair of lovers. Rowyn stared. She saw a woman with flame in her breath and sorrow in her bones. Silver fire burned around her, but it did not protect, it consumed. Beside her, a man. Pale eyes. Dark crown. Bone-forged armor. Malvith, but not like this. Alive. Mortal. Beautiful. Erlyn laughed in one scene, sang in another, kissed him like the world was ending in the third. Then, betrayal. Silver chains. Screaming. Fire. Sacrifice. Malvith never wept. He simply stood beside her pyre and let the world burn around him. Rowyn's throat closed. "She chose to die," Malvith said, his voice so low it was nearly wind. "To stop the fire. To save me from what I might become. And he exhaled, slow, dry. "I killed her anyway. Because love wasn't enough." Coran's jaw clenched. "And you want us to walk the same road?" Malvith's eyes returned to him. "I want to offer you a choice." He stepped forward, and from the ash pulled a small object, something glowing faintly, softly, like the last ember of a dying star. Rowyn's breath hitched. It was the silver flame heart. Her soul's core. The thing that had once bonded her to the ancient fire. "I can sever your bond to fate," Malvith said. "Unbind you from prophecy, from death, from trial. Take this. Give me the heart. And I will let you go. No more dreams of burning. No more pain." The temptation sliced deep. Rowyn stared at the ember. So small. So harmless. Her hands trembled. Coran didn't speak. Malvith's voice was soft now. Almost kind. "You've walked through trial after trial. And still, you end here. As I once did." Erlyn believed she could carry the fire without cost. "You believe you can love and still win. You will fail as we failed. But I offer you mercy." He held out the ember. Rowyn took a step. "Rowyn," Coran said gently. She froze. "I can't stop you," he continued, voice quiet. "And I won't beg. But I need you to hear something before you choose." She turned her head slowly, eyes already glistening. "You are not Erlyn," he said. "And he exhaled shakily. I will never be Malvith. I'd rather be broken beside you than whole without you. Tears spilled freely now. I don't know if we'll win, he whispered. But I know that letting go would kill me faster than any fire. Her fingers clenched. Malvith didn't blink. Then you choose ashes. Rowyn nodded once. I'd choose him. And then she did something Malvith didn't expect. She reached out, touched the ember, and crushed it in her palm. The heart didn't shatter, it burned. A violent pulse of silver fire exploded between them, searing the air, scarring the stone. It didn't hurt them. But Malvith reeled back, cloak alight, face twisted. No, he hissed, shadows writhing. You were supposed to. Rowyn stepped forward. You want us to be your mirror, she said. But we're not. You let fear kill your love. I'll let mine kill everything else. Coran stood beside her, hand sliding into hers. Their bond flared, hotter, brighter, then steadier. Not perfect, but theirs. And the ash shuddered. Malvitha's shape faltered. For a moment, a younger version of him flickered across his face, softer, sadder, broken by love, not by madness. Then it vanished. His voice echoed one last time. Very well. The price is sealed. Around them, the crypt groaned. From the ashes below came a whisper, not Malvitha's, not the gods, but something older. She has chosen love. So love shall be her undoing. The silver flame's bearer shall lose the light in her soul. Rowyn's breath caught. The light in her soul? She looked at Coran. He was already looking at her. I'm not afraid, she said. You should be, he whispered, and kissed her like it was the last breath he'd ever take. As the crypt began to crumble, and the last ash dissolved into fire, they held each other tightly. Not because they were safe, but because they had chosen each other. No matter the cost. Chapter 21. The light she tried to save. There was no door. There was no floor. Only falling. Rowyn's scream vanished before it even reached her lips. The world around her stretched in unnatural directions, shadows warping into the shapes of wolves, of hands, of mouths that whispered but never spoke. Then, she hit nothing. Not the ground. Not even ash. It was simply absence, and it welcomed her like a grave. A low voice hummed through the dark. Did you think love would save you? Rowyn tried to move, but her limbs were sluggish. Her breath dragged like knives. Silver flickers danced before her vision, remnants of the heart she had crushed, of the fire she had chosen. Her throat cracked. Where am I? The voice didn't answer directly. It was familiar. Velvet. Poison. A lover's whisper if that lover wanted to undo you. Then light, harsh, cold, unkind. And suddenly, she wasn't in the crypt. She was standing in a clearing. It smelled like burnt sage and blood. Before her knelt her mother. Chains around her wrists. Fire licking at her feet. No, Rowyn gasped, heart lurching. No, not this. Rowyn, the woman said, eyes soft. You said you'd save me. Flames rose. Rowyn lunged forward, silver fire surging to her palms, but it recoiled. Turned black. Burned her instead. She screamed. The world shattered like glass. And rebuilt. A sickbed. A young wolf, ribs jutting beneath pale fur. Breathing shallow. Rowyn's younger self beside it, pressing hands over a too-thin chest, whispering spells she barely knew. The wolf coughed once. And stilled. You said I'd live, a child's voice echoed from the corpse. You promised. Rowyn stumbled back. No, please. Another fracture. Another rebuild. A battlefield. Coran, bleeding from the chest, teeth bared in a grimace as he dragged her behind him. His body shielding hers, arrows sprouting from his shoulder, side, thigh. This is what loving you costs, he growled, only the voice didn't belong to him. It was Malvitha's. Rowyn's legs buckled. No, she whispered, hands over her ears. This isn't real. A quiet laugh slithered down her spine. Isn't it? She turned. He was standing behind her, Coran. Or rather, something wearing his face. But this one didn't wrinkle his brow. Didn't glance sideways to check if she was breathing. He was still. Empty. Beautiful and hollow. You burn everything you touch, he said. Me. Children. Hope. Rowyn's lips trembled. Stop. You call yourself a healer, he continued, stepping closer, shadows twisting at his feet, but all you bring is fire. She backed away. He followed. Even now, your fire is fading. You have nothing left. You crushed the heart. You gave your flame to him. And for what? Rowyn choked. Because I love him. Fake Coran tilted his head. Love doesn't save people. It ruins them. He reached out, touched her cheek, and she felt her own warmth recoil. You're not the light, he murmured. You're the ashes that remain. Rowyn fell to her knees. And finally, she believed it. She thought of her mother's scream, of the child who never got to grow, of Coran's body torn apart to shield her. She thought of Illyra's knowing smile, of Malvitha's calm certainty. She had tried to be light, but maybe she'd only ever been the fire that destroyed. She bowed her head. I'm sorry, she whispered. Something cracked. Not outside. Inside. Then another voice. Not the fake. Not the dark. Just a memory. If you are fire, Coran had said once, breath warm in her ear, arms wrapped around her like armor, then I will be the ash. I don't want to survive you. I want to burn with you. Rowyn's eyes snapped open. The false Coran smiled. But she didn't smile back. Instead, she stood, straightened, and in a voice like flint said, then burn with me. Silver light exploded from her skin. Not the soft, healing glow she had once offered to others. No, this was her flame. Hers alone. It tore through the illusion. The battlefield crumbled. The dying wolves vanished. The chains broke. And the false Coran screamed, not in pain, but in rage, as her fire devoured him from the inside. She stood in a world of fire. Alone. And not afraid. Rowyn clutched her chest, feeling the last flickers of the silver flame heart within her. It was dim. Nearly gone. Like a candle left out in a storm. But not dead. I was never meant to be your savior, she said aloud, staring into the smoke. I was never meant to fix the world. She closed her eyes. I was meant to choose. The fire coiled around her, not to consume, but to follow. To answer. The nightmare howled once more. Then silenced. She opened her eyes. And gasped. The fire was gone. So was the crypt. But so was she. Her fingers were transparent. Her body shimmered like heat above stone. She looked down at her chest and saw the heart, cracked and splintered, light pouring from it in barely their pulses. I'm fading, she whispered, then turned her head. Somewhere, distant, pulsing faintly through the bond, was Coran. Alive. Needing her. And she had no time. She pushed forward. One step. Then another. Her feet didn't touch anything real, but her will burned brighter than flesh. Hold on, she whispered to the memory of him, to the fire in her blood, to the man who once said he'd burn with her. I'm coming back. Even if she had to drag her soul through every layer of ash to do it. Chapter 22. The Wolf Who Forgot His Name. Snow. It was all he knew. Not the soft, clean snow of mountain peaks, but the kind that scoured skin to the bone, ash-flecked and cruel. It howled between jagged cliffs like wolves mourning their dead, but no beast cried here. Nothing lived this far north. Not even memories. Coran stumbled forward through the white silence, one hand dragging behind him, leaving a dark streak in the snow. Blood? He didn't know. He couldn't remember why it mattered. His name. He paused. What was it? The cold had gnawed at the corners of his thoughts until they frayed like rotted thread. He remembered fire once. And a woman's voice. A sharp, stubborn voice like steel drawn in the night. Her eyes, were they violet? Or silver? No. That was someone else's dream. He was a wolf. A blade. A thing made for death, not dreams. Coran. The name drifted to him on a whisper. Too soft. Almost nothing. He turned. There was no one behind him. Only the endless frost. Only jagged peaks known as the frozen spine, a place even gods had once abandoned. Coran, the voice came again, firmer now. Don't forget. He pressed his palms to his temples. Something hot pulsed in his chest. Was it pain? Or the last echo of something precious? The snow shifted. And standing where no one had stood before was a woman. She wore a shawl woven from shadow and ash, and her face. He blinked. It was his mother. Or the shape of her. But her eyes were too deep, too knowing. Her smile too perfect. The snow didn't melt on her skin. She didn't breathe. You're not her, he said, his voice hoarse. No, the woman admitted, stepping closer. But she's the shape your mind trusts. And we have work to do. Coran took a step back. But the woman only raised a hand. The snow parted behind her like a curtain, revealing a frozen lake, a mirror of still, perfect ice. At its center, a circular pool, black as night, pulsing faintly. The pool of unbecoming, she said. Step in and you shed the burden. Pain. Guilt. Her. A flicker. Her. Something in his chest screamed. Who? He asked. Who am I shedding? She tilted her head. Isn't that the point? To forget. His hand curled into a fist. There was something wrong. He shouldn't be here. He had to. He had to what? Her voice, no, that voice again, the one that wasn't the false mother's, slipped under his skin like warmth in a dying hearth. You hated my singing, remember? You said it made the wolves howl worse than pain. He closed his eyes. But you listened anyway. He shuddered. Rowyn. The name cracked from his throat like an oath torn from ice. The false mother stilled. Her face flickered. For one heartbeat, her expression twisted. Annoyance? Pity? You don't need her, she said, stepping closer. She's a thorn. A curse. You were always meant to become more. I was meant to be me, he rasped, but the words felt like smoke. She extended a hand. Come. The pain will stop. You'll forget the fire. The guilt. Her. He turned his gaze toward the black pool. And in it, he saw himself. Not as he was now, but as he would be. Bone pierced his shoulders. His eyes glowed the red of fresh blood. Silver fire curled at his feet, and in his hand, her throat. Rowyn. Struggling. Screaming. His fangs tearing through her light. No, he whispered. Yes, the false mother said gently. The future is already written. You only delay the inevitable. He fell to his knees. His hands buried in the snow. His name. Her face. That moment beneath the moonwake altar when she had looked at him, eyes full of pain and love and defiance. Even if we die in the fire, let me be the one to love you first. His scream shattered the silence. The false mother's expression cracked again. Frustration. Let go, she snapped. Coran looked up, shaking. I can't. His voice cracked. Because she didn't. He staggered to his feet. The wind howled louder, as if the mountains themselves had awakened. I remember her hands, he said. I remember her fury. I remember how she always looked like she was about to punch the world and kiss it afterward. Snow began to swirl around him. The pool trembled. I remember how she laughed through tears, he said. How she said she'd never forgive herself, and then forgave me first. The false mother's shape wavered. You will lose yourself again, she hissed. Then I'll find me again, he growled. And he turned. Walked away from the pool. Away from forgetting. And in his ears a voice whispered, not illusion, not echo, but her. I don't hate you. Even if you forget me, I'll find you again. The snow stopped falling. Coran looked up. And something behind his ribs burned. It wasn't fire. It was her. Chapter 23, The Devouring Moon. The wind at the Devourer's ascent had no mercy. It didn't howl, it screamed, clawing through bone and memory like the jaws of some ancient god forgotten by time. The two moons above shimmered with unnatural hunger, pale silver and dusky red. Where they hung in the sky, the world seemed cracked, as if reality itself bowed beneath their gaze. Rowyn climbed with bleeding fingers and burning lungs, the weight of ash dragging behind her like a funeral veil. Her silver flame core flickered with every step, dimmer and dimmer, a sputtering candle at the edge of eternity. Her body was broken in ways that would never heal, but still she climbed. She didn't whisper Coran's name. Not anymore. She couldn't afford to. Because if she said it out loud, she might fall apart. At the peak, she collapsed to her knees. The altar of the Devourer awaited her, a slab of carved moonstone, veins of black flame running through it like ancient scars. Around it, spectral remnants of silver flame elders drifted in slow circles, faceless and robed in shreds of shadow. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She wasn't here to plead. She was here to offer. The moon's spirit appeared like a ripple of light condensing into form, neither male nor female, neither cruel nor kind. Its voice was a breath, an echo older than gods. To call the wolf back from the edge, you must burn what anchors him. Rowyn raised her head. What does that mean? Her voice cracked, raw from screaming into dreams and silence alike. The spirit tilted its head. To call his name truly is to be known by him. You must sever what connects you, your tenderness, your sweetness, your softest love. The wolf follows the scent of memory. If you burn those, he may return. But he will return to a stranger. Rowyn stared at her trembling hands. They were scarred, bruised, but not from weakness. From holding on too long. From loving too deeply. The moon's spirit extended a flicker of light. Offer it to the altar. Offer him. Her chest cracked. She had imagined dying for him. But forgetting him? Letting him live without ever knowing what they'd been? She closed her eyes. And remembered. The first time she saw him, not as the Bone King, not as the enemy, but as a man with tired eyes who caught her when she collapsed in flame. The first time he let her touch his throat, his most vulnerable point, trembling, but not from fear. The first night under the Muwake altar. The pain, the passion, the promise. The way his breath caught when he whispered, "You're going to destroy me," and how she kissed him anyway. Tears spilled. "I love you," she whispered, and poured the memories into her flame. It roared. Silver fire ignited across her body like a pyre. Her mind screamed. Her soul twisted, pulling those precious fragments from the root. She gasped as images turned to ash behind her eyes. The way he touched her. The sound of his laughter. The exact shade of his smile. Gone. The flames consumed the altar. She collapsed, body shaking, mouth open in a silent sob. Her eyes were wide, but saw nothing. Her voice came in a whisper so soft the wind almost stole it. "Even if you never love me again, even if you never remember me, just live." Far away, on the edge of the frozen spine, a crack split the earth. Coran's body jerked upright as if struck by lightning. Ice burst away from his chest as breath filled his lungs again. His fingers clawed at the ground, and his eyes flew open. Empty. Blank. He gasped. Someone was dying. Someone had loved him. He looked down at his hands, at the marks burned into his wrists, the contract of the moon, the seal of silver flame. They meant something. They were him. His name felt foreign. Heavy. But one word tugged at him. Not through logic. Not through memory. Through ache. "Rowyn," he whispered. And for the first time since awakening, a tear fell down his cheek. Not from pain, but from the absence of something once beautiful. A howl ripped from his throat, shaking the sky. It wasn't the howl of a king. It was a cry for something lost. For something he didn't know how to find. But deep within the Devourer's ascent, where the silver flame had gone out, Rowyn lay in silence. No tears. No thoughts. Her hands curled loosely over her chest, where the core once burned. And far above, the twin moons shifted. The red one opened like an eye, and watched. Chapter 24. The Bone Crown Rises. The throne of the Ashen Wolf did not sit beneath stars or sky, but beneath a canopy of bone and smoke, where time moved like ash drifting in a still wind. The walls of the old palace were built from ribcages of beasts long extinct, their marrow etched with runes too ancient to read. The air reeked of fire long since burned out and power too patient to die. And atop the obsidian dais, where once sat kings of fur and flame, now stood the figure draped in shadowed robes stitched from the hides of the forgotten, silver-threaded and terrible. Malvith. The bone crown rested on his brow at last, a twisted diadem of fused femurs and jagged fangs, humming with the cries of 1,000 buried oaths. It pulsed with a glow not of life, but of defiance against death. Before him, the dead knelt. Thousands of them, warriors, kings, wolves of old, called back from their rest by the soul-forging flame that twisted through Malvitha's veins. Their eyes shone with hollow light. Their armor clanked like distant thunder. A legion reborn in ruin. The ancient dead had a new master. "You sleep too long, old wolf," Malvith murmured, his voice neither gentle nor cruel, only inevitable. "The world has forgotten you. But I remember. And I will reshape it. In fire. In ash. In bone." The twin moons groaned above the world. And from the rent in the red one's eye, bloodlight poured down like a curse. Far across the battlefield of time and pain, Coran stumbled into the throne hall, silver flames sputtering around him like dying starlight. His clothes were scorched, body scarred, but his eyes burned bright. He remembered now. He remembered her. "Step away from the crown," he growled, voice shaking. Malvith turned to him, smiling with something like pity. The prodigal heart. Still cracked. Still warm. "What a stubborn flame you carry." "You don't have to do this," Coran said. "There's still time to stop." Malvith descended from the throne like a god descending from the mountain, each footstep cracking the ground with the weight of power reclaimed. "Stop? My dear heir, I have waited through millennia of silence. Through betrayal. Through love." His eyes narrowed. "You think I want to burn the world? No. I want to unmake the fate that burned me." Coran's fists clenched, blood dripping from knuckles torn by stone and memory. "She still breathes," he said quietly. "Not for long." Coran surged forward. Their clash was silent, no roar, no thunderclap. Just the collision of legacy and desperation. Flame met bone, will met wrath. Malvitha's crown pulsed, calling dead memories to strike from the shadows. Chains of soul fire wrapped around Coran's limbs, forcing him to his knees. Malvith stepped closer, tilting Coran's chin with a finger cold as the grave. "You are not strong enough," he whispered. "Not yet. But I admire the performance." He slammed his hand against Coran's chest. Agony bloomed. Coran's scream echoed through the throne hall as he was blasted backward, his body colliding with the stone edge of the dais and tumbling into the depths below, the bone chasm, where failed heirs were once cast to be forgotten. Darkness swallowed him whole. Above, Malvith raised both arms. The bone crown ignited. The wrath moon screamed as it split further open, pouring down silver-red fire. The dead howled. And in the depths, where no light reached, Coran bled across ancient stone. He gasped, body broken, lungs rattling. He had failed. Again. Like Malvith once had. "I couldn't save her," he whispered, but the words didn't leave his mouth, they cracked within him, shards of guilt slicing at his soul. Until a heartbeat. Not his. Older. Deeper. It echoed through the marrow of the earth. Through his bones. Through his name. The air in the pit changed. Became thicker, heavier, colder. The walls began to breathe. A voice, guttural and ancient, rumbled through the stone. "You are not done." Coran's body arched as something inside him stirred. The mark hidden beneath skin, passed from ancestors to heirs, sealed with blood and oath, glowed faintly beneath the filth. The mark of the first wolf. Of the betrayer redeemed. Why? Coran whispered, unable to move. Because one must be broken to break fate. Light seared across his chest. He screamed again as the skin above his heart split open, not with pain, but with purpose. Beneath the flesh, bone twisted into runes, pulsing with silver fire. If I trade my bones for her soul, can destiny bleed? The voice did not answer. But the pit answered. Power bloomed from the chasm, ripping through silence. The bones around him quaked. The blood that pooled beneath him glowed, not red, not silver, but something between. He rose. Barely. His breath came ragged. But his eyes, they were clear. He looked up toward the ceiling of the chasm, where fire reigned and the bone crown laughed. I was born to burn, Coran said. But I will die to change. He opened his chest wider. The runes flared. And the howl that left him was not that of a man, nor of a wolf, but of something far, far older. The howl of the one who dares to defy death. The howl of the one who still remembers love. Above, Malvith turned sharply. He felt it. The bone had cracked. And something new was waking. Chapter 25. Her heart, his fire. The air in Ashrift Hollow tasted like soot and memory. Even the wind had forgotten how to move here, caught in a stillness that wrapped the land in mourning silence. The cliffs loomed jagged, teeth of a dead god's jawbone, and the hollow itself was a bleeding chasm in the earth where no light dwelled, only the throb of a dying heartbeat and the glimmer of silver flame. Rowyn's body no longer bled. It had passed that point. She floated now, barely more than an outline of flame and dust, suspended in the center of the silver flame heart core, an ancient, crystalline engine once forged to store the wrath of forgotten gods. Her limbs had fused into the veins of the crystal. Her breath had faded into its rhythm. Her soul flickered against the curved obsidian walls like a candle in a storm. Malvith stood before her, quiet, reverent. He had not spoken in some time. There was no need to. His work was nearly complete. You were not meant to burn this long, he murmured at last, reaching out to touch the edge of the crystal that cradled her. But you were always stubborn. Always hers. He leaned closer, voice low and cruelly tender. Erlen's ghost breathes through you. But this time I won't lose. Not to love. Not to fate. Rowyn stirred, just barely. Her soul, flickering weakly, turned her head toward him. There was no body left to move, only will. You don't get to speak her name, she whispered. Malvitha's lips curled, but he said nothing. He raised one hand instead, gathering dark flame in his palm, preparing to seal the final bond. To consume the last echo of resistance. That's when the earth broke. A howl, deep and guttural, split the hollow. No, not a howl. A rupture. A rending. The world cracked in half, and from the broken edge of the bone chasm, something tore through the veil between what was and what should never be. Fire. But not silver. Not divine. Black fire. The kind that doesn't burn wood or flesh, but burns truth. Name. Memory. Malvitha's eyes snapped wide as the flame surged like a tidal wave up the cliff wall. The ground trembled under the weight of a force too wild to be caged, too ancient to be named. Coran rose from the flame. Or what was left of him. He was no longer a man. Not entirely. His body had fractured and reforged, bones turned to armor, veins turned to molten chain. The wolf beneath his skin had burst forth, no longer golden-furred and noble, but wrapped in shadows and embers, eyes burning with unspoken grief. Each step he took shattered stone. His breath steamed in the cold air, hotter than any forge. Malvith took a step back, but the smirk returned. You finally came. Tell me, do you remember who she was? Or are you just here to claim what remains? Coran didn't answer. He didn't have to. The fire around him roared as if in response. His form blurred between man and beast, between love and death. He looked past Malvith, through him, and saw her. Rowyn. Her soul suspended. Flickering. Fading. "No," he said, voice cracking like thunder against stone. "Not again." He raised a hand. Bones split from wrist to shoulder, forming a jagged sigil over his chest. Then he plunged that hand into the air itself, ripping it open, folding space inwards, stepping into the core where Rowyn was bound. The silver flame heart core rejected him. It shrieked, sizzled, warped. But his black flame consumed everything. Coran forced his way inside. And then he was beside her. He fell to his knees before her soul form, trembling. Rowyn blinked, barely able to shape thought. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm never where I'm supposed to be," he said with a rough breath. "But I always find you." His hand hovered above her chest, above the flicker of her silver flame heart. It no longer beat, but his burned in defiance. He bent forward, his forehead resting against hers, fire and ash mingling in the dead space between their ghosted forms. She looked at him, something breaking through the smoke. "Do you remember me?" Coran's lips brushed her cheek, reverent, trembling. "I only remember one thing," he whispered. "That you're the reason I'd burn down every star in the sky. You're the reason I'd become the end of the world." His kiss met her mouth like a vow spoken at the end of the world, soul against soul, fire against fire, neither of them whole, but together. The fusion began. His black flame poured into the heartcore. Her silver soul expanded within it. And for a heartbeat, just one, the world forgot they were dying. In that breathless space, they remembered moonlight in her hair and laughter in his eyes and the warmth between them when they had nothing else. Then the hollow screamed. The silver flame heart ore couldn't contain them. It cracked. Malvith staggered back as fire exploded outward, molten wind rushing over the ash cliffs like the roar of an ancient beast waking. At the center, fire-wreathed and unyielding, stood Coran, cradling Rowyn's flickering soul in his arms. His own body charred, his chest open like a shattered altar. But he stood. He turned to Malvith, shadows writhing around him. "Battle starts now," Coran said. And for the first time, Malvitha's smirk faltered. The sky above the hollow shifted. The twin moons, ever watchful, shuddered in their orbit. And then the second moon cracked, split open like an egg of blood. From the gap, a third eye opened in the heavens. A moon no one prayed to. A moon no god claimed. A moon only the end acknowledged. The blood moon eclipse rose, drenching the hollow in light that wasn't light at all. Malvitha's voice shook as he whispered, "You awakened it." Coran didn't answer. He only held Rowyn tighter. And the world held its breath. Chapter 26. The Moon That Was Never Ours. The Bloodspire crater pulsed like a wounded heart beneath the eclipsed sky. The crimson light of the third moon, unholy and absolute, bled over the fractured stone, turning every jagged edge into a shrine of ruin. Around the rim of the crater, the dead stirred. Not simply risen, but called. The once proud wolves of ages past now marched in silence, cloaked in bone, armored in shadow, eyes hollow with commandment. At the center stood Malvith. He was no longer shrouded in illusion or elegant deception. He stood tall, robed in the ash-colored hide of ancient wolves, crowned with the spiraling white antlers of the first flame, and in his chest flickered the blazing outline of a god's heart, not his own. The silver flame. Alive. Hungry. Terrifying. Coran faced him across the crater's breach, the edges of his form still wreathed in dark fire, the last remnants of the forbidden blood flame that had carried him through the hollow. His left arm no longer looked human. It had fused with the bone mark. Claws, like ivory daggers, pulsed with each heartbeat. Behind Malvith, suspended above the ritual pyre, was Rowyn. Or what remained of her. Her soul was half-threaded into the flames already, strands of silver unspooling into the core of the ritual. Her eyes fluttered open for moments at a time, luminous, lost. Every second she remained, more of her burned away. "No closer," Malva said, his voice not loud but absolute. "The ritual has begun. Interfere, and she is erased from all realms." Coran did not move. His hands trembled, but his feet stayed rooted in the stone. "You lied." "Not entirely," Malvith replied, turning slightly, the flames casting flickers across his face. "I am the Father's remnant. A failed vessel. A shadow born from the last breath of a dying god, meant to carry his fire, but unworthy." So the cycle began again. New blood. New vessels. His gaze lifted to Rowyn. She was born to hold it. Molded, watched, scarred, every trial, every loss, was to test her flame. Coran's heart cracked beneath the weight of understanding. Every moment, every injury, every near death. The way fate had constantly steered Rowyn toward despair, how their paths crossed in precise, brutal poetry, none of it was chance. "You used me," he whispered. "Of course I did," Malvith said gently. "You were the perfect accelerant. The wolf too stubborn to die, too soft to stop loving." Coran's legs nearly buckled. "Was anything real?" Rowyn stirred. Her voice was almost a breath. "You were." Malvith sneered. "How poetic." "She clings to sentiment, even as her essence becomes ash." Coran lifted his head. There were no tears now. No screams. Only silence, like the moment before a blade falls. He stepped forward. "Then let me ask one thing," he said, voice hoarse. "If everything was written, if I was meant to love her, to burn for her, to lose her, why do I still feel this much pain?" Malvith raised a brow. "Because pain is the only truth left in you." Rowyn's soul flickered brighter for a moment. "Coran." He looked up at her. "Would you still choose me?" she asked, voice trembling, "if you knew I was never meant to be saved?" He walked into the flames. Each step sent cracks through the crater, the blood moon pulsing faster overhead. His skin blistered, his bones groaned. Still, he walked. "I would choose you," he said softly, "even if you were the dagger in my chest. Even if loving you ends me. Even if," she whispered, "I was only ever meant to be a weapon." He smiled. "I would kiss the blade." Malvith snarled, extending his hand, but it was too late. Coran's body erupted with light. Not the red-black fury from before. This was bowfire. Forbidden. Sacred. Ancient. The blood flame of the first wolves, twisted into reverse. He thrust his claws into his own chest. The seal ruptured. His ribs split open like wings made of ash and marrow, and from the hollow cavity of his heart, the bone brand ignited. A single glyph, older than language, etched itself across the sky. The seal of defiance. Malvith screamed. The ritual wavered. Rowyn's soul flared. Coran's blood turned to starlight. He reached toward her, even as his body crumbled under the divine inversion. His hand, bone and fire and promise, cupped her soul, anchoring her. "No more scripts," he said. "No more design." Malvith lunged forward, fire in both hands, but the bonfire howled louder, forming a barrier of ancient runes between them. Coran's body fell to its knees. But his spirit stood tall, half wolf, half ember, crowned in smoke, robed in memory. "I name myself," he said, voice ringing through the crater, not as the heir, nor the puppet, nor the king. He looked up at the blood moon, eyes blazing. "I am the one who breaks the chain." And then, under that cursed sky, he changed. Fully. Wolf form surged over him, but not the sleek golden wolf he once was, nor the shadowed beast born of grief. This form was new. White bone. Silver flame. Eyes like the moon's last tear. A true heir of destruction. He turned to Malvith, who now stumbled backward in disbelief. "This moon," Coran said lowly, voice not quite human, "was never ours to begin with." And with that, he leapt. Chapter 27, The Heretic King. The wind howled through the shattered spires of Wolfgrave Citadel, carrying with it the dust of long-dead kings and the scent of blood not yet spilled. Coran stepped over the threshold of the ancient hall, bare feet treading stone worn smooth by generations of pause and war. The walls were carved with battles older than memory, each notch, each fracture a history written in claw and fang. No torches lit the path, yet a silver phosphorescence rose from the bones embedded in the walls, casting him in the ghost light of his inheritance. He held Rowyn's soul fire against his chest, bound by the bone-brand glyph that still burned faintly over his heart. Each step closer to the central dais grew heavier. The weight of a crown not yet worn, the burden of a throne no one dared to sit. And waiting in the shadows, their forms like mist and old grief, stood the Silverbone elders, 12 wolf spirits cloaked in the fragments of their former flesh, their eyes hollow save for pale moonlight that flickered inside. One of them moved forward. Not walked, flowed, as if memory itself obeyed his call. "You come with flame and fracture," the eldest murmured, voice like the grinding of bone against ice. "You are not of the line." "I come with blood and love," Coran answered, voice steady. "Is that not enough?" They circled. "A prince unchosen," whispered one. "A wolf of broken name," another hissed. "A vessel already cracked," spat a third. Coran knelt. "I do not ask for blessing," he said. "Only power. Enough to break the cycle." The central elder descended toward him, jaws opening, not in threat, but in ritual. "To claim the god-wolf's might," the elder intoned, "you must give what roots you deepest. The fire of your kind is not in strength, but in memory. Love." Coran's breath hitched. "The price is Rowyn." His fingers tightened around the soul flame against his chest. "No." The shadows stilled. "No?" They echoed, confused, disbelieving. "I will not trade her," Coran said, rising slowly. "Take my days instead. Every moment I have left to live. Every heartbeat from now until the end. Let the weight of kingship be my death, so long as she remains my light." Silence fell like an executioner's blade. The elders did not speak. Instead, the throne behind them cracked open. From beneath the dais, bone twisted and rose, spines, ribs, skulls fused into a jagged seat of kingship. The throne of the heretic. Made not for rulers of lineage, but for those who chose to burn rather than inherit. "Then take it," said the elder, "and carry its curse." Coran walked forward. As he neared, visions slammed into him, memories buried deep in the marrow of his soul, now summoned as the final trial. He stood once more in the snowfield of his youth. His brother, Eland, barely 14 winters, eyes full of tears and rage. "You shouldn't have run," Coran had shouted. "And you shouldn't have brought the enemy here." Eland screamed. They had fought, blades drawn. But Eland had hesitated. Coran had not. The memory pierced him like a spear. He saw his younger self, panting, holding his brother's lifeless body. Saw the blood on his hands. Saw the wolf he could have become, the one that chose cruelty. And then, Rowyn. Not her full self. A shimmer. A soul shadow. She stepped into the memory, barefoot in the snow, untouched by time. She knelt beside him, touched the blood on his younger hands, and whispered, "You didn't kill him because you were a monster. You killed him because you couldn't bear to let him fall to them." Tears burned in Coran's eyes. "You should hate me." Rowyn smiled faintly. "You're not the wolf who bites. You're the wolf who chose to stop." The memory faded. The throne called. He turned, walked the final steps, and sat. Pain exploded through him. His spine cracked backward, bones jutting through skin to form a second spine of armored ridge. His ribs splintered outward, reshaping to hold flame instead of lungs. His heart stopped, then reignited in white fire. The blood-bone warplate grew from his back, curling down his arms like a carapace of ash and ivory. The silver flame core pulsed once, twice, and fused into his chest. When his eyes opened, they were not gold. Not red, but the silver black of a moon drowned in fire. He was no longer Coran the rogue, Coran the lover, Coran the half-wolf. He was the heretic king. A sound cut through the windless air, a slow, deliberate applause. Malvith stood in the ruins of the citadel's archway, a smile carved cruelly across his lips. "Bravo," he said softly. "You've done it. You've become the monster I needed." Coran rose, the throne splitting behind him like broken glass. "I am not yours," he growled. Malvith tilted his head. "Aren't you? Look at you. Bone, flame, grief. You're everything I ever was, and more. The perfect weapon." Coran stepped forward. "No," he said again. "I'm the end of you." Malvith chuckled, but there was a flicker of something uncertainty, fear, in the way his smile trembled. Above them, the second moon gave one last shudder, then died, snuffed out like a candle in a storm. Darkness swallowed half the world. And in that shadow, the heretic king howled. The sound tore through realms, across craters, through nightmares, into the remnants of Rowyn's soul. She stirred, eyes opening once more. The flame had not forgotten her. Not yet. Chapter 28, The War That Burned the Moon. Moonfall Abyss had no sky, only darkness rent by flame. Coran stood at the edge of the world, his bone-clad frame ringed in seething shadow, his heart pulsing with the fading rhythm of a war already too old. Behind him, the blood-bone banners of his legion snapped in the sulphur winds, thousands of wolves risen from ash and memory, bound to his howl, his purpose. And ahead, Malvith, crowned in silver fire, limbs stretched into the impossible, his body no longer man or wolf, but something between, something beyond. The Star Eater, the last inheritor, the fang that bit heaven. Around Malvith, the shattered husks of the silver-flamed disciples bowed in prayer, siphoning the last of the divine light from the decaying twin moons above. They fed it into the altar at the abyss's center, an altar that now held the only thing Coran still feared losing. Rowyn. Suspended like a star frozen mid-fall, her soul flickered inside the core of the Godfire ritual, her light unraveling thread by thread. Each second brought her closer to complete erasure. Coran didn't wait for a signal. He howled. The blood-bone wolves surged. Malvith smiled, wide enough to split the stars. The battle began. The first clash was like a continent breaking apart. Malvith's voice summoned void fire and falling comets, his hands tearing open the sky as if reality were paper. Coran met him in midair, his blade forged from ancestral bones singing through the cold. Each strike shattered another piece of the abyssal platform. Flames of red, silver, and black clashed and wove like celestial serpents, scorching the dead sky with runes of war. Below, the armies tore into each other, bone against silver, old hatred against forsaken faith. Coran fought through them all. Every swing of his sword brought him closer to the altar, but each inch cost him blood. His armor cracked. His left arm shattered. His ribs split. But still, he moved. And Malvith, evolving, shed his skin, growing wings made of constellations and claws that dripped starlight. "You were never meant to stop me," Malvith roared. "You were made to become me." Coran coughed blood, blade dragging behind him. "You destroyed the world to fix one wound. I was willing to pay the price. Are you?" Then Malvith turned, and with a single gesture, the ritual drew deeper. Rowyn screamed, not in pain, but dissolution. Her light fractured like glass, scattering across the altar. Coran's knees buckled. His vision narrowed. Time slowed. And in that suspended breath, he saw her. She stood before him, not as a warrior, not as a martyr, but as the girl who once cupped his face with fire-touched hands and whispered dreams into his scars. "Don't come closer," she said. Her voice was soft. "Certain. You'll die," he choked, reaching. She smiled. "So will you." He shook his head. "Not like this. Not without you." Her fingers brushed his cheek, though she had no body left. "Don't save me. Save yourself." His throat closed. His heart beat once more and burst into flames. No, he whispered. Without you, there's no self left to save. He rose, bleeding, broken, burning. The silver flame core in his chest ignited with final fury, light roaring from his back like wings of ruin. He screamed as it consumed him, screamed as it fused with every remaining piece of his body. He became more fire than flesh. Malvith turned too late. Coran plunged into him like a star falling from judgment. They collided at the center of the abyss, bone and godflame, betrayal and love, and the world screamed. The ritual shattered. The altar exploded in a torrent of light and screams and memory. Malvith howled, not in victory, but in agony, as Coran's fire tore through every version of him across time, across fate, across the mirror-looped chain of every mistake he had ever made. They fell together, locked in a spiral of flame and grief, consumed and consuming. And then silence. Ash fell where stars once burned. The moon cracked. Then the second moon. Then the third. The sky went still. And in the center of the desolation, among smoldering bones and fading echoes, a figure knelt. Coran. Bare. Scorched. Alive, barely. He held something invisible in his hands. Rowyn's soul, what was left of it. She was light now. Faint. Like the last ember before winter claims it. He lifted her close to his chest. Held her as gently as the night holds sorrow. I'm here, he murmured. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. Her voice, so quiet it might have been memory, answered him. You were always enough. He wept. For all the love twisted into war. For all the choices that led here. For the girl who burned to save the boy who forgot how to feel. Her light faded, little by little. He kissed her forehead. His lips trembled. Rest now, Rowyn. But just as she vanished, just as the last of her scattered like fireflies, she whispered, Coran, we'll meet again. And was gone. The sky did not cheer. The stars did not sing. Only silence remained, wrapped in the ruin of a world rebuilt on love and undone by it. The moon that once watched them was now nothing but a shadow. But in that darkness, something stirred. Not death. Not godhood. But beginning. Chapter 29. The fire in his bones. The wind tasted of ash and silence. Coran opened his eyes to a sky scorched pale, a canvas of broken moons and drifting embers. The ground beneath him cracked like brittle bone, warmth pulsing faintly from the wreckage of a world reshaped by fire. Somewhere far off, the echoes of war still rang, faint and hollow, like a ghost breathing through the ribs of a dead beast. He sat up slowly. His muscles ached with unfamiliar restraint. The armor he once bore was gone, scattered like memory. His hands, burned, calloused, trembling, clutched nothing now but dirt and forgotten names. Coran, a voice said gently beside him. He turned. The name didn't feel real. It hung in the air like borrowed language. Illyra crouched at his side, face drawn but calm, silver strands of her hair braided with bone charms and old ash. Her eyes, once sharp with command, now held something quieter. Grief. Patience. Where are we? His voice was sand and stone. Moonsere wastes, she replied. What's left of it? He glanced around. The battlefield had become a graveyard of the divine. Silver flame altars broken in half, bone pillars jutting like ruined teeth, and miles of scorched earth stretching into nothing. Once, this place had housed ceremony and blood oaths. Now, only ruin. How long, he asked. 3 days since the final flame died. You were barely breathing. No one thought. She didn't finish. He looked down at his chest. The scars glowed faintly, as if something still burned inside. A distant warmth, not painful, but lonely. There were others nearby, wolves in tattered cloaks, survivors gathering what little they could from the wreckage of prophecy. Some bowed when they saw him. Most just watched in silence, unsure whether to revere or pity. Why am I still alive? He muttered. Illyra hesitated, then handed him something. A small piece of bone, carved into a crude charm. On its surface was a sigil, half a flame, half a tear. She gave everything, she said. But she never asked you to follow. The world tilted. He stood too quickly, stumbled, caught himself. Images flickered in the corners of his mind, silver fire, a name on his lips, the warmth of a body pressed against his in the dark. But they faded like smoke before he could hold them. That night, they camped under a hollow moon. The wind no longer carried the scent of war, only the dust of endings. He sat alone by the fire, watching the embers pulse and shrink. A young wolf, barely 10 winters by the look of him, approached. Ashwind, they called him. Too small for a soldier, too curious to be afraid. Sir, Ashwind asked shyly, did you ever love anyone? Coran froze. The fire crackled. He didn't look at the boy, just stared into the flame until it blurred. Yes, he said finally. Once. What was she like? He closed his eyes. I don't remember. Ashwind tilted his head. Then how do you know you loved her? Coran's jaw tightened. His fingers clenched the dirt. Because I wake up every day feeling like I've forgotten something that should have killed me. The boy didn't understand, but he nodded politely and padded away, leaving Coran alone with the fire. He stayed there long after the camp had fallen into sleep, long after the stars had faded. His mind offered him fragments, laughter in the rain, the taste of blood and honey, someone singing off-key under a dying tree. Sometimes he dreamed of hands reaching for his, always slipping just before contact. He hated how his body remembered what his heart had lost. And then, just before dawn, he found himself drawing in the ash. Not with intent. Just instinct. A face. Eyes like summer storms. Hair the color of twilight caught in flame. Lips pressed to his forehead. A name just out of reach. He stared at it. The firelight caught on the curve of the drawing. His fingers traced the line where her cheek would be. I don't remember your name, he whispered. But I know what you meant. A flicker. He looked up. Across the sky, a single silver butterfly fluttered through the smoke. Its wings shimmered, translucent, ethereal, and as it passed, it left behind a thin trail of firelight. It flew higher and higher still until it caught flame mid-flight and became a shooting star. He stood. Watched. The star fell slow and silent toward the broken horizon. And as it vanished, he breathed the only vow he still knew how to make. I'll find you, he murmured. Even if you don't remember me. Even if we have to burn the world again. The wind carried the words into the ash. And somewhere far beyond time, something stirred. A flicker. A heartbeat. A promise. Chapter 30, where the moon still burns. The moon was different here. Smaller. Hung lower in the sky. Pale as breath against winter glass. It cast no silver glow, only a bruised shimmer that slid over the edges of leaves, the thatch of rooftops, the stillness of water. In a village without name, wrapped in frost-bent pines and whispering dark, a girl awoke screaming. Her breath came in bursts, her skin slick with sweat. The thin linens clung to her, and her fingers trembled as she touched the faint mark pulsing just below her collarbone. A scar, they said. A strange burn from when she'd fallen as a child. But tonight it glowed. A silver flicker. Like a forgotten promise. She gasped as the dream's afterimage clung behind her eyes, a figure clad in black fire and bone, rising from the heart of ash, calling her name, not her village name, not the one the midwives gave her, but something older. Something lost. She pressed her palm to the scar again. He was crying, she whispered into the dark. But not for himself. Footsteps shuffled outside. The door creaked open. A hunched man entered, his hair a crown of thin white wisps, the scent of crushed herbs following him like an old lullaby. The village healer. Eyes cloudy but kind. You cried out, he said softly. A bad dream. She stared at him. Words clung like frost on her tongue. I saw someone, she said slowly. In fire. He was burning, but not dying. His bones were lit like torches, and he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. The old man knelt, fingers gently checking her pulse. "Dreams are strange creatures," he said. "Sometimes they come from our own hearts. Sometimes from places far beyond this world." But this felt real. Her voice grew tight. He knew me. He didn't speak. Just looked at her mark again. His brow furrowed, as if recognizing something too dangerous to name. "You've had this since you were little," he murmured. "I was born with it," she corrected. And for the first time, she didn't wonder if that had meant something. She stood, dressed slowly. The wind outside was sharp, the smell of snow beginning to gather. But beyond it, somewhere deep in the forest, she heard it. A howl. Not mournful. Not hungry. Searching. She walked out without speaking again, bare feet pressing to frozen soil. The trees swallowed her without protest. Above, the moon bled through clouds like a wound that had never healed. With each step, something pulled inside her. Not pain. Not joy. A tether. A song. The echo of a bond not yet undone. She didn't know his name. Not really. But she knew the weight of his hands, the sound of his breath against hers, the fire in his kiss, the way he said, "I'll find you," like it was the only truth he'd ever known. Her mark pulsed again. Not in warning. In answer. Far away, across mountain and ruin and dust, beyond the reach of history's ending, a throne stood in silence. Built from shattered bone and molten earth, it waited in the heart of a dead temple, where the world had once burned. On the altar before it, 2 rings lay side by side, carved from silver bone and ash. No hands wore them. Not yet. But the fire still smoldered in their hollowed centers. A breath of wind stirred the ash. In it, a whisper curled like a vow. "Wherever your soul burns, mine will follow."